Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the San Bruno City Council regular meeting of October the 25th, 2022. The meeting has been called to order. May I please have roll call?
Councilmember Hamilton.
Here.
Councilmember Marty Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Salazar.
Here.
Vice Mayor Mason.
Here.
Mayor Rico Medina.
Here. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like us all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would ask Janet if she could lead us this evening. Thank you, Janet. I appreciate it. At this time, we're going to open it up for public comments for items not on the agenda. Individuals will be allowed up to 3 minutes. It is council policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. And what I would remind for those that are in the audience, we have speaker cards over here with Lapita. So if there's an item that you wish to speak on, please submit the speaker cards. Those that are here will have priority to go first, and then we will certainly go to those in Zoom, and I offer them that same opportunity. Are there any persons that wish to speak on items that are not on the agenda?
I do not see any members of the public wanting to speak, and there are no virtual hands raised.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to announcements and presentations. And the first item will be the presentation of an update on the Tanforan preliminary project application submittal and the city's community engagement process. As we start with that, I know the city manager will be starting it. I will be recusing myself due to my home and its location. And so with that, I'm going to step off the dais, turn it over to the vice mayor, and I will be in the audience for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Medina. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and let our city manager, Jovan Grogan, go ahead and begin the presentation.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Mason, members of the City Council, members of the public, and all of our staff here today. My name is Jovan Grogan, and I have the pleasure of being the city manager of San Bruno. And we are here tonight for an exciting presentation. It's really a presentation about the future of a 44-acre parcel in our community. And so earlier this month, the city received a preliminary application from Alexandria Real Estate Equities for the redevelopment of Tanforan. As you'll hear today, Alexandria has two partners, Strata Investment Group and Midpen Housing. We are here to provide the city council and the community with an overview of the preliminary application, but also equally important, we're here tonight before we begin the entitlement process to review the preliminary application, really to give the community a overview of this process that we're about to embark and walk together on as we review that application and make sure that the future of Tanforan really benefits the entire San Bruno community. So my presentation tonight will be very brief, and then joining me will be, or joining right after me will be Darcy Smith, our Assistant City Manager. She is the city's chief executive that will be supervising and managing this project, and you will also hear from others. And as I attempt to change the screen, next slide. Perfect. Okay, our agenda. City presentation, we will have the objective, we'll provide a little background. We will then go in a level of detail on the preliminary application, and then we'll talk about that community engagement process. We'll also have the developer here tonight to provide the community and the council with the presentation. We will take public comments and then answer questions. Next slide. Okay, our objective, as I said before, is to provide an overview. And next slide. A little bit on the background. So it's important to begin as we transition to the next slide with the city council priority focus areas. So as many of you that follow our meetings knows that the city council every year adopts priority focus areas. And these are not in priority order, but they are very important, and they set the tone and the direction for what we work on as staff. Implement our transit corridor vision and revitalize downtown and the commercial corridor. Assure rehabilitation and replacement of critical community facilities and infrastructure. Grow city revenues to assure ongoing financial stability and economic vitality. Continue to strengthen community connections and engagement. Protect and improve community aesthetics and safety. Continue to proactively plan for the future of San Bruno, and organizational health and employee success. While what we're talking about tonight relates to a little bit of each of these, it's really important to note that there are two that are really at the core of what we're talking about tonight, and those are highlighted above. That's grow the city's revenues to assure ongoing fiscal stability and economic vitality, and to proactively plan for the future of TanFran. And we want to talk a little bit about how we're doing that. And so our housing element, as many in the community know, the state of California has what's called regional housing needs allocation. And so as we all know, we are in a housing crisis. And it is important that we do our part to develop housing for the region and for our residents. And in January of last year, the city received our allocation. It is just over 3,600 units, and in fact, it's 3,640 units that we need to plan for by 2031. And so TanFran is a big part of that vision. It is a site that is connected to transit, and we will talk a lot about that, 101, 280, 380, with a BART station attached to it and a Caltrain station less than a quarter mile down the road. With very close proximity to San Francisco, other points on the peninsula, and you almost don't have to get on the freeway to go to SFO. There probably is not a better transit-connected site in Northern California. And so leveraging this site for housing and to benefit San Bruno is extremely important. With respect to the housing needs in San Bruno, on the next slide, we have some stats that we'll go through very briefly. It's important to note that our regional housing need allocation is allocated to the city at various levels, a very low, moderate, and above moderate. And so area median income, we want to provide some statistics on that. So in 2022, as we all know, are in a very expensive place to live. And so our very low area median income for a family of four is $93,000, and that's approximately 50% of the area median income. The low for a family of four is $149,000, and that's 80% of AMI. And then a moderate unit for a family of four, to qualify for that unit, you have to make less than $199,000. Some extremely high numbers in this part of not just California, but the country. And so the units that we were allocated as a city are broken down into those four categories, and it's 810 at the very low, 466 at the low, 659 at the moderate, and 1,705 at the above moderate. So as I mentioned before, the reuse of TanFran is critically important and is imperative for the future of San Bruno. We just talked about housing and the state mandates around housing, but also we know in our community that we hear from our residents that they may be looking for a different style housing or a different type of housing, and because there's the limited housing stock, there's not somewhere for them to either rent or buy into. We hear from members in our community that they're looking for a home to stay in their community, but there's less than 20 houses on the market. And so housing is critically important. Fiscal sustainability is also critically important. TanFran has been, for the last 51 years, a retail center, a core part of our economic base here, and as we all know, it has that revenue has dwindled over time as retail has decreased. And we mentioned before TOD and the transit-oriented development opportunity that is TanFran. So a little bit on the site and history. TanFran has a very rich history in our community and in the state of California. In 1899, it opened as a racetrack, and it was the site of the first flight in San Mateo County. It was also the site of the first aircraft carrier landing and takeoff in 1911. Unfortunately, in 1942, for 6 months, TanFran served as one of the main Bay Area centers for American citizens of Japanese descent that were interned, and approximately 8,000 Japanese residents were processed and detained at TanFran before they were sent out to larger facilities. There was a recent memorial that was opened just in front of the BART station. The racetrack closed in 1964, and then shortly after that, the mall opened in 1971 with a major renovation in 2005, and the San Bruno BART station opened in 2003. As we go to the next slide, TanFran's history as a retail mall really has followed the trajectory of retail malls throughout the U.S. And by 2019, 1/3 of the malls in the U.S. Had closed or was transformed into another use. And many on the council and many in our community over the last several years have noticed the decline of TanFran and really emailed the city, called, stopped me, and said, "What are you doing about TanFran? We love TanFran. It's a beloved part of our community. The shops are closing. What is next? We are losing our tax base." And so as we, sorry, technical difficulties, go to the next slide. We just see these images from across the country and the U.S. about malls closing. And so let's talk a little bit about why. And on the next slide, we talk about site ownership. And this is prior site ownership. But we just want to take a brief moment to talk a little bit about why. So TanFran, before it was purchased by Alexandria, was owned by 3 individual private property owners. JCPenney's, QIC, an investment firm, and Seritage, a real estate investment trust of Sears. And so all 3 of those private parties had a say in how TanFran as a property was used. They had what's called a reciprocal easement agreement, and for one party to do something, generally the other 2 parties had to agree. And so in 2021, the city was contacted by the owners of 2 of those parcels and were informed that they would in fact be putting their parcel up for sale. We quickly organized and developed what's on the screen, which we termed Reimagining TanFran, and we developed a land use fact sheet. And after much study, it called for a mixed-use development with a minimum of 1,000 housing units that included office, retail, and entertainment, really capitalizing on the location and the strategic location that is TanFran. And the city council adopted that vision in July of '21. And largely due to that action, as individual entities looked at buying a portion of the TanFran site, it was clear that the city had a vision for the future redevelopment of TanFran, and we were excited when one entity came forward and purchased TanFran because really what that allows is it allows for us to be here today with one party walking in with a vision and a preliminary application. And so there were news reports of that, And now what we want to do is we want to turn to what's coming up. What are the next phases as we embark on reviewing this preliminary application and engaging with the community? And I'll turn it over to Darcy Smith, our Assistant City Manager.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. Darcy Smith, Assistant City Manager, overseeing this effort. I'm going to cover the preliminary project application review by the city and the city's community engagement effort, which is really exciting for this project. Let's see, next slide. So the city's review started when the application came in about 2 weeks ago. We initiated a comprehensive review by all the city staff reviewing this. The feedback is provided to ensure the project is in alignment with the city's vision and requirements, such as the Tanforan fact sheet that the City Council adopted last year, and a plethora of other city requirements that are applicable at this stage. We're also going to embark on technical analysis, studies, economic assessments, and ultimately we'll start CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act review of the project. So our intent, again, starting this early, working with key stakeholders, much like we want to work with the public early, as you'll hear about next, is to work with those key stakeholders, agencies, and other interested parties. And this is a site with many neighbors, such as BART. Actually, the city's police station is a neighboring property. And we also have other regulatory agencies, such as the FAA and San Francisco Airport. So our intent is to work with them early and get a lot of early input, and we've already started some of those meetings and relationships. So this will include an airport land use compatibility plan consistency review as well. And this is a robust process. So later on I'll show a slide of the timeline. It's 18 to 24 months, and again, we're really in month 1. But what we're here to talk about next is Tanforan for San Bruno. So this is exciting because we were able to take advantage of some play on words here with this slide. And Tanforan for San Bruno is our branding for the city's community engagement effort. I really want to emphasize this is the city's effort. We wanted to get out there early and lead our effort under the banner of, again, Tanforan for San Bruno to keep the community informed and solicit community input throughout the process. And there's a few ways that we're doing that, and it's really, really varied in how we're approaching it. And I want to just pause and thank Jen Dianos, the assistant to the city manager, who's been instrumental in leading this effort. As you know, she does a lot of work behind the scenes for the city's public relations, community engagement, social media. So she's been helping the team, as well as Singer Associates, who's worked with the city in the past, helping build what I think is just a beautiful project website for virtual participation at tanforanforsanbruno.com. Really easy to remember, and a storefront that I'll talk a little bit about, which will be inside the Tanforan Mall. That will be the center of all in-person participation. And ultimately, all of this engagement this year and early next year will result in a community priorities report based on the listening events that will come back to council early next year. So I'll cover those in just a little more detail. So why are we doing all this? Well, again, there's a lot of community education and engagement that is needed for this site. This is a really special site. It's a really special opportunity. It's really almost a sort of once in a lifetime opportunity. These buildings will be there actually probably long past when we leave this earth. And there's a robust vision for the site, as you'll hear next from the applicant. So we want to educate the community, want to engage the community. Our first phase will be focused on listening. It's really an open listening session to the community's needs and the vision to gain this input. And if I can just wrap it into one phrase, what we're trying to do, we're trying to learn what the community loved about Tanforan and how a new Tanforan can benefit the broader San Bruno community. So a lot of our exercises will start with, what did you love about Tanforan? Did you like bringing your kids there to the movies? Well, good news, the movie theater is staying. Did you like playing there or going to some of the events there, so that we can try to make sure that some of that history is brought forward into the future. We also want to focus on how this project will support the community today and then into the future. Because again, this is a generational project. It will affect your children and their children. And again, this robust effort goes above and beyond what would normally happen for an application, right? You know, normally we have one community meeting, it might, maybe two, and then we'd march on down the process. But this is much more robust. It goes beyond the normal baseline, you know, community meetings that we have for development projects, because it's such a big site and it's so important to the city and the community. So I'll talk a little bit about this website. If I see a lot of devices here, so I hope some of you, if you haven't looked at the website, bring it up because it's one of the nicest websites. It provides context and application information. The application that is attached to the staff report tonight is on this, that the applicant will work through is on this webpage if you want to bring it up. And ultimately, we'll build virtual engagement tools, so surveys and other exercises online, again, to complement our in-person exercises. And we'll also post all of our meeting information there, things like the listening report. The city has a separate project website. It's very basic. That's where the basic information is. But this is a really fun website, so I hope you check it out. And again, it's dedicated to keeping the community informed and soliciting community input, both in person and virtually, throughout this 2-year planning process. So the Engagement Center, this is under construction. It's going to be inside Tanfran. There's one down at Hillsdale Mall that's worked pretty well for this, but this is important. This is the city's space for in-person meetings, pop-up events inside the mall. And we'll have events there taking place starting next month, continuing into next year, and will be a variety of formats. Not everyone can come to a meeting on at a certain time, certain day. There'll be some office hours, there'll be smaller events, stakeholder meetings. There'll be both informational components like a timeline wall, participatory walls. I think you've seen some of this at different community engagement events that will like spring up in this room, right? And then we have to bring it all down. One of the best things about this space is that it can last for a period of time, and then we can really get different types of participants that we can't always get in a venue like this or at City Hall or at Community Day. We'll still do some of those other events like Community Day to get input, but this will be the central location. So really excited about this, and this will come online next month. And all of this ultimately, as I mentioned previously, will feed into a community priorities report. Well, why is that important? Because it will be back before you next year so that you can learn about what's important to the community, and it will also include additional analysis by staff. And again, this will help focus your review, the city's review. Like I mentioned, we'll post that on the webpage, be very transparent and open with all the material, and we'll also take feedback on that report and continue engagement. The next slide shows the timeline, which I mentioned previously, you know, is a long process. As you know, development takes time, 18 to 24 months. We're here at the very, very beginning. These are the key stages, and shortly after step 2, which is the listening for community priorities, we expect to receive the formal planning application for the plan development master plan. This is really important because we want a phase of listening prior to the formal application being submitted. And there's, again, a lot of California Environmental Quality Review, technical analysis and studies, engagement continues, and then the end is this formal review by the city. So how are we going to make sure everyone's informed of all this? Well, luckily we live in a world with a lot of social media. We have these accounts live, so again, if you're on your device, you can go to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter and follow these. Again, it's the city's engagement tools, and we hope to keep the community informed through those. We have a dedicated city email. If anyone has questions to the team, they can email us here at tanfran@sanbruno.ca.gov. We'll also send out direct mailers starting next week for any meetings, et cetera. And then we have the city manager's e-newsletter. And if anyone hasn't read the mid-October edition, that was dedicated to Tanfran. There's a lot of good information there. Didn't want to cover it all here. Tried to hit the highlights, but if you haven't read that e-newsletter, which is posted on the website, a lot of great information there. And again, thank you to the team, especially Ms. Dianos, for putting that together. So the next steps, again, community meetings officially launch in November. We'll post those on the website and social media, and we'll return to the City Council with the Community Priorities Report next year. And that concludes my staff report. Are there any questions for the city presentation before we turn it over to the developer for their presentation?
Are there any questions from council? No? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Teresa Nemeth of Alexandria Real Estate Equities.
Okay. Good evening.
Let's make sure it's working first. Yes.
Yes, okay. Again, good evening. I'm Teresa Nemeth with Alexandria Real Estate Equities, and I'm looking at this. There, now I can see you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. It's great to see you, Madam Vice Mayor, council members, and greater San Bruno community. We, at Alexandria, as City Manager Grogan indicated, have purchased the 3 parcels that were for sale that composed the Tanforan Mall. We knew, because the city had done this wonderful process to reimagine Tanforan, that the city wanted a mixed-use community. And so we, at Alexandria, don't do residential, typically, and we don't really do larger scale retail. So we turned to partners that we have worked with in the past. Okay, hold on. All right, technical difficulties. Return?
Now it's working.
Oh, now it went too far.
Yeah, go back. There's a
A tiny lag.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. It went too far. Sorry. So we turned to partners we've worked with before, Strata Investment Group, and my colleague Michael Cohen is here from Strata, and Mid-Penn Housing, and Felix Ayung is here from Mid-Penn Housing. They do affordable housing, and the presentation will be coming up shortly.
Yeah, just give us 1 second.
Sorry, I messed up.
No, it's okay.
Just let me know if you want to take a little break.
Hopefully not. Hopefully we just, okay, we might need to take a little break.
Okay, let's take 5 minutes. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I thought I knew what I was doing.
It's not your fault, though. The system is just a little bit glitchy. Technology.
we can go ahead and start. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. We're just gonna do this old school, and I'm gonna say next, so, next. So, as I was saying before, Alexandria is working together with our partners, Strata Investment Group, who does a great deal of residential and retail development, and Midpen Housing, who does affordable housing. Next. So you've heard tonight that this site is critical to the community of San Bruno, but we looked at this site and realized that it is indeed a magnificent location to put a mixed-use community at. It is at the crossroads of 3 major highways. It has BART, it has walkability to Caltrain, and it is a very easy place to get into and out of without having to traverse the rest of your community. So it creates a real benefit to anyone who wants to locate there and to the surrounding community. Next. We begin our process by thinking about how we would think about the site. We establish some basic principles for ourselves that help guide how we move forward. The first is to create a true mixed-use transit-based village, to create vibrant places for people to shop, come together, enjoy themselves, to obviously provide for the housing with a significant component of affordable housing that the community much needs. Thinking about sustainability and how to leave behind, as Assistant Manager Darcy Smith reminds us, something that's going to live long beyond many of us, our lifetimes. And to create a location where innovation can happen that will then catalyze the economy of the city of San Bruno into that future, while all the while honoring and preserving the community's legacy and history. Next. So we know the site is essentially a number of structures surrounded by a sea of parking. So this is very much of something that is from the middle of the 20th century thinking. So now it's about looking into the future. Next. And so what we looked at is to really organize this site into 2 basic zones. One zone focused to the north and fronting on Sneath that creates a real mixed-use village of residential and retail activity that is then paired with a life science office zone that is tucked up against the freeway on the south. Next. That results in a plan that creates about 1,000 units of housing, that creates a good amount of retail space, including the existing 2 uses that are long-term ground lease tenants of the site, the movie theater and Target, and that provides for life science uses that will energize the city's financial future. Next. So those components that you see here, retail, housing, life science, and open space, are really what come together to create a new vision of a community at Tanforan. Next. From a bird's eye view, this is kind of orienting folks to what the density of this site would look like. This is not a high-rise development. This is really more of a mid-rise development, low to mid-rise. The lab buildings are 5 stories, but it's because the lab buildings require taller floor-to-floor heights. So each floor is taller than your typical floor. The residential buildings tend to be 7 stories in general. And then, of course, the retail is much smaller scale, and it's what ties everything together with open space. Next. We looked a little bit at that center piece of the village that we're calling a village at the center, connecting the pedestrian access from El Camino Real to BART and really bringing folks together. To understand the scale, we kind of looked at some locations around the peninsula that people might know, such as the Hillsdale Shopping Center, and then some examples from outside of the peninsula, the Marin Country Mart, and also in Santa Monica, the Cinema Promenade. Those are spaces that people might have experience with, might understand, and might really think about what the scale is so that they can begin to see how this space can accommodate a lot of different types of activities and really create opportunities for engagement and for enjoyment. Next. So these are just some artist renderings. This is not yet a full design. This is not really architecture. This is really meant to create a sense of what it might feel like to stand on Sneath Avenue, looking at the corner of Seabiscuit Lane and looking into the site, seeing that there is residential units, that there's retail on the ground level, and that there's a lot of space for people to be able to walk and enjoy themselves as they come into this new village. Next. So once you've arrived in this kind of central space of a village, it would be well landscaped, it would have places for people to sit, you'd be able to access the movie theaters, for instance, you'd have places for eating and dining, cafes, that kind of place that is nicely protected from the wind. We know this community has quite a bit of wind, and so we want to create a place where people can really feel comfortable being there for an extended period of time. Next. This is another view from another area within that sort of central village. So again, there's places for it to have vehicular traffic, pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic, but there's also places to create zones where people might sit on a lawn type space, might have a place for kids to just relax with their parents while they might be eating some food that is surrounding there. And then there's the residential that you see in the background. Again, this is not a design, it's just a concept of residential activity that could be happening there. Next. Then at the El Camino Real entrance to this campus, there would be a mix of uses that would bring people together and encourage them to come into the village and probably head over to BART, or then come out of BART and end up at El Camino Real. Next. And then a view from the BART station, looking as you might be arriving on BART, what would you see? You'd see the movie theaters and a new access point to the movie theaters because the theaters are up above that parking garage, so we need to bring people up to the theater. Lots of activity, and again, places for people to walk and be able to move about freely. Next. And then thinking about how kids like to play on things that aren't always necessarily playgrounds. They like to climb, they like to explore, and so you see, for instance, on the upper right, an image of the Tunnel Tops Park in San Francisco, where that's not really a dedicated playground, but it is a place where kids love to just enjoy themselves. So we see this as an opportunity for the type of thing that we could have in this central village environment. Next. And then from the perspective of what Alexandria has a lot of experience with, we know that our tenants, the life science community, is very much interested in having places where they can attract top talent to come work in their businesses. And they know that some of the things that are important to that talent is the environment that they would be working in. They like places to be outdoors. They like places where they could go for a walk. There's a trend now for walking meetings. Who knew? And for being outside. But it's also that the access to BART and to Caltrain is really important because more and more the younger generation are not interested in being in their cars for extended periods of time getting to and from work. So we know that this is a place where we will be able to attract tenants that can then in turn attract top talent to come work for them. Next. So just a little bit from the pre-application. It has a lot more detail. I don't want to take all the time tonight, but just to tell you, we've thought very carefully about transportation, how to get people in and out of the site. When they are in cars, how do they get to the site? Where do they park? So this just in general shows you drop-off locations and where people can come in and out. Next. This is the pedestrian circulation. So people who want to walk through the site, again, for these wonderful walking meetings or for getting to picking up a lunch or going shopping at Target, who will continue to be on the site. They're a long-term ground lessee of the site, and so we are working collaboratively with them to find a location and a perfect size of a building for them to continue to be on the Tanforan site. Next. And then always thinking about the bicycle connections to the city's bicycle network. So you see in yellow the city's own existing and future bicycle network, and we would be tying into that and ensuring that folks would be able to get to and from work using their bicycles or other moving devices. Next. And that concludes my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer questions and really look forward to this community engagement process that the city manager and assistant city manager have laid out. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Before we move over to public comments, does the council have any questions or comments? Okay, Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. It's been very, very clear and informative. I just have some comments. I really want to encourage the public to, and our residents here in San Bruno, to participate in this process. This is going to be a long process, and as we go through this, and you really do have an opportunity to have a voice in what's going to happen here at Tanforan. It's very, very exciting. Been talking to lots of residents since this preliminary plan was released, and there is a palpable excitement percolating through the community. So there's a lot of interest and a lot of excitement. But it is important that people, stay engaged and understand what's going on, and there's going to be ample opportunity for that. So I would also encourage my colleagues here on council to, share and overshare about the events that will be happening to encourage our residents to participate. So I'm really excited about it, and I really appreciate it, all the work that's gone into this. I especially want to call out the efforts early on by our city manager and staff to get out in front of the sale of Tanforan with the Reimagining Tanforan fact sheet, so that we could, go out into the world and find good partners to bring a great project. And it looks like that's where we're headed. So I'm super excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. Councilmember Medina.
This is really amazing. For years, Tanforan has been kind of just there, and this is something that we can all look forward to. It's huge with the housing opportunities that are there, of putting housing where it is least impactful to our residents, where it's not right up against the neighborhood, that people can get to mass transit, get right off, walk over to work, walk over to the theater, walk over into that village. So I'm really thrilled to see this, and yes, a lot of credit goes to our staff for putting this together, and also to the council for providing that direction. So thank you all for being here.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Medina. I do have some comments, but I'll wait until public comment is over. Do we have any public comments on this item?
I see one hand raised in person.
My name is Jim Evangelist, 105 DeSoto Way. I'm glad all the council members are so excited about this project, but I hope that some of you have a memory of what happened with the crossings. We were very excited about that as well, and we did not get some of the major components of it, the hotel, or the, no offense to Jack's, but the five-star restaurant as well. Because we were told once it was, once those plans were not fulfilled, that we had just talked about as residents and voted for a concept. So I hope that those of you who are so excited about this project will, when they finally come up with the end results, will make sure that it does come to fruition instead of being developed differently based on economic conditions or whatever. Also, if we're gonna add another 1,000 units, living units in San Bruno, currently we have about 11,000, and I think we have 9 parks serving 11,000 homes. It seems that the amount of space where you're gonna locate in pretty high density living, there's no place for people to be in that community, which is going to be sort of a set-aside community from the rest of us in many ways, divided by the 380 and nestled up against South City. So I think that might be something you might want to include in this large development, because what I saw from the presentation so far is nothing but a few little, not even parks. I mean, it makes Centennial Park look large. So I think those are 2 things you might want to consider going ahead if you have even that kind of clout with the developer. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Evangelist. The developers are here, so hopefully they're listening. Do we have any other public comments? Come on up. Come on up, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Janet Ludis. I live up in Shelter Creek, and I think on one of your Zoom meetings, I brought up this subject about we're in the middle of a 2-year drought. I don't see any desalination plants going in, and I know the state is requiring us to build housing, but where are we going to get the water for 1,000 units? Where are we going to get the water? That is one of my main questions. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other public comments in the room before we move to Zoom? Seeing as how there appears to be none, are there any public comments on Zoom?
Yes, we do. First speaker I will be bringing in is Kalisha Webster.
Hi.
Kalisha Webster, can you hear us?
Hi, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good evening, council members. My name is Kalisha Webster, and I'm the Senior Housing Advocate at Housing Choices, a nonprofit service provider supporting San Mateo County residents with developmental and other disabilities with finding and retaining affordable housing. On behalf of San Bruno's more than 300 residents with developmental disabilities who require deeply affordable transit-oriented housing in order to live independently and integrate into the community, I'd like to thank the developer for proposing a mixed-use village near a transit hub, which has the potential to create a more equitable and inclusive community. While we understand that housing development at this scale is often not feasible without the development of office space, based on the ratio of housing to office space suggested in the Reimagining Tanforan fact sheet developed by the city, the projects should have about 1 unit per 1,200 to 1,300 square feet of office space. This proposal should have, based on that ratio, should have a minimum of around 1,500 units of housing. In order to offset the increased office space being proposed, the city should ask the developer to increase the community benefits by increasing the total amount of housing, increasing the proportion of affordable units, and/or requiring deeper levels of affordability to be met. The city should also consider how the site can be utilized to meet the needs of special needs groups identified in the housing element as facing the greatest barriers to housing accessibility, including but not limited to people with developmental disabilities who would benefit from on-site supportive services funded by the Golden Gate Regional Center. By including some units in the Tanforan project to be set aside for people with developmental disabilities, the city has the opportunity to address a critical unmet housing need. The city is currently home to more than 200 adults with developmental disabilities, less than 15 of whom have been able to transition into their own apartment with supportive services due to the lack of deeply affordable housing available in the city. Thank you for your leadership to make San Bruno a community in which people of diverse incomes and abilities can continue to thrive.
Thank you, Ms. Webster. Do we have any additional public comments?
Yes. Next speaker is Aros Harmon. Aros Harmon, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hi, this is actually Plymouth Ansburgs. We're dialed in from the same Zoom meeting. Actually, I have like a somewhat similar comment to the last person who spoke, which is that since this concept for the site was first introduced, it seems like the office space has doubled, but the housing has not. And it was already poorly tilted in favor of probably more workers coming in than places for people to live, which is, not great. I really think we can increase the amount of housing here. There is a lot to like about this project. I love the ideas for walkable space that can be shared between the residents and the employees, some of whom hopefully will be the same people. I would encourage the councilor and the developers to look at a project in Menlo Park that's been in development for a while that we just called in to comment on last night, called Willow Village, that's being developed over near Facebook. I called into that because I actually work out of a test lab sometimes that's directly adjacent to the site. And that's what looks like a really gorgeous project that's, they increased the amount of housing based on public comment. And I really think it's done like good things for the site. And if we did that, it would be good for our city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Bart Pondoja, San Mateo, BCTC. Bart, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Good evening, council members and city staff and San Bruno city residents. As was mentioned, my name is Bart Pontoja. I am the business manager of the Building and Construction Trades Council, representing 16,000 men and women in construction, working and living in San Mateo County. I just called in to commend the city of San Bruno on their strategic vision for this transit-oriented development. The building trades and our members who are residents are excited to see this development come to fruition. Moving forward, feel free to contact me with any questions and any way we can help in this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pantoja. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Anna V. Anna V, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, city council members, city staff, and fellow citizens. I wanted to also echo the sentiment of the previous speakers regarding the availability of affordable housing. I would really love to see that the housing really be promoted for our local residents, especially our first responders, police, fire, city employees, as well as teachers and school employees. There is a lack of affordable housing available in our city. And since all this housing is going to be built, I would like to see it be available to our local residents that live and work here. Unfortunately, in a lot of developments, I think these get bought up, housing gets bought up by investors and real estate companies, and maybe even some of the companies that are being built in our city purchase housing for their employees. But I would like to see just the regular citizens of San Bruno who have been long-term citizens have the right and privilege and opportunity to purchase affordable housing in our city. I also wanted to say thank you so much for making this a project that is transparent and inclusive, and that you are asking for feedback from our community as it does impact us today and for future generations. So thank you so much for making the information easily accessible and available so that we all can be participating in this process. And the drawings and renditions that you have look very promising. And I do hope, as the previous speaker had mentioned, that there may be more housing included in that, as well as parking spaces that are adequate for the buildings that are being proposed. Thank you so much for everything you're doing and for your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next comment, please.
There are no other virtual hands raised.
Okay, great. Thank you. And in the room, no further public comment? Okay. Thank you for the presentation. So just highlighting the request for deep level of affordability, units with special needs, pocket park, if as possible throughout the location, water security, were amongst some of the issues that were brought up tonight during public comment. I just wanted to say that there's a lot of excitement about this project. Just as an example, I shared this the other day just on my social media page, and in a city of 17,000 households, there were 75 shares. It crossed over 18,000 individual pages and got almost 5,000 clicks. And so there's definitely excitement. That's probably some of the greatest movement that we've seen on a project. And it's really potent, and the number of units that would be placed here would really put a dent in the RHNA requirement that we have not been able to fulfill for many years. So we look forward to what's to come ahead, and thank you so much for the presentation to everybody who's part of the project and to the staff who put the presentation together. Thank you. I think at this point the mayor will come back up.
Thank you very much to the Vice Mayor. And we will continue on the announcements and presentations. We will go to item B, which is San Bruno Recreation and Aquatic Center update. And we will first turn it over to our city manager and then to the project manager. City manager.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Medina, members of the council and public. Excited to provide the city council with an update on our very little project, actually not at all, our $60 million Aquatic and Recreation Center project that is currently underway. As the city council knows, periodically we provide a detailed public update on this project, and you will absolutely receive that today. You'll receive an update on the work that occurred in June, July, August, and September. We'll talk about what you can expect over the next 30 to 60 days. And we'll also give you an update on connected projects. And there are a couple of connected projects. One of them is installation of solar panels on top of the roof. Council will know that you approved a partnership with PCE, and we'll provide an update on that. We'll also talk about a connected project that is installing a traffic signal that the City Council authorized a few meetings ago at the intersection of Crystal Springs and Oak. as well as various ADA and pathway improvements in the park that are needed, and road paving to Beckner Shelter, which we were able to fund with an existing project that the City Council has already authorized in the budget to pave that Beckner Shelter Road, but actually able to do that fairly efficiently because some other paving will be done soon related to City Parkway. So without any further ado, I will turn this presentation over to our project manager, Rod McRae, and thank you.
Thank you, Juban, for the introduction, and good evening, City Council members and everyone that's listening tonight. Again, my name is Rod McRae. I'm the project manager. I will be providing you the update on the rock project. We have about 28 slides to share, so please bear with me. And just to point out, our company name changed from CPM Associate to Consor. Our agenda will cover the following topics. That includes a project information update, completed to date, schedule update, change order report, budget update, what's happening the next 30 days and beyond, other projects update that includes solar PV update, the Crystal Springs City Parkway intersection, and other project updates that will cover Beckner Shelter Road and Crystal Springs sidewalk. Project information, as most of you know, we started September 2021. We are still expecting to complete the project by fall 2023. To the end of September, we are about 40% complete. So about this time, we're about 45% complete. The 40% is equivalent to what the contractor can bill us contractually. So you can see below the two progress photos taken back in June 8th, and the latest photo taken on 12, showing how much progress from the last time we reported to the council. Just to recap some of the field activities from the last time we updated the council in June and to this month. June, we mainly work on the excavating the foundation. In July, we have the foundation poured and started the water line at Crystal Spring. In August, we closed the City Parkway and started receiving some steel frames and start erecting them as we received them. And we also started the utility work, starting with sewer. In September, while City Parkway is closed, steel framing continued to progress, started the roof decking and work on the creek. Utilities as well, water, storm, and sewer continued to progress. In October, we continue to do the roofing and decking. We construction of the creek, and we're about 70–80% complete in the utility work. In the process and dealing with some of the challenges, we work with the design team, biologists, arborists, communicated with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Regional Water Quality Control Board for the work on the creek. We communicated with the Google navigation people and the public to minimize public inconvenience during the road closure. Just to show you some photos that passed back, we started the creek and digging on the foundation. We continue to progress. We got the foundation poured. We are in preparation for the steel erection. And in July, we closed the road and we start receiving steel framing, and you can see some of the steel at the natatorium. Continue on wall A at the gymnasium side. As we close the road in August, you can see the aerial photo where we started the sewer, the steel framing erection, while creek work and water lines are in progress. And first steel frame erection continued to progress on the auditorium and the gymnasium side. In this photo, in addition to the structure element of the building, we can now start visualizing some of the rooms, community halls, classroom, party rooms, and fitness room and cardio room. You can see a roof trusses for the gymnasium are still being installed at this time. More progress for September, showing progress in natatorium Most of the major framing pieces are installed, as well as the decking, waiting on the trusses to be placed this time at the natatorium. Here's another September update for the overall site work. As you can see, building and existing pavement has been removed throughout the entire site. Almost every major part of the project is being worked on. The creek, the road, parking lot, sewer, water, and the storm drain system are in progress. Some of the close-up look of September activities. You can see some of the utility work being done. You got the bioretention, the creek, the water line, and storm. For the month of October, we're almost done framing and roofing the building. We can now see better perspective of the building. The elevation is coming from elevation view from Crystal Spring, and the bottom elevation is the view from City Parkway. From the City Parkway, we can now visualize the party room, full lounge, group exercise, the entrance from the City Parkway, classrooms, and community hall. Photos on the right are the inside photo from the gymnasium and natatorium. As you can almost roofed. Here's the overall site work update for October. Contractor is working on all the utilities. Water line is about 95% installed, but we still need to tie that into the existing system. Sewer are about 65%. Remaining sewer is waiting for the water line to be completed in order to proceed. The storm pipe are about 85% complete. Storm pipe parkway has been installed. The creek bed is now complete. The planting along the creek will be done next year, but we'll continue to install the irrigation this year. The bioretention is about 40% complete. More October update on the road realignment and parking lot. As you can see, the area has been graded. Most of the utilities under City Parkway has been installed, except the area closer to DeSoto. Hoping to get good weather, favorable weather for the next few months, so we could place some rock and start paving them by December and open it to public. More closer look of some of the utility work on. We got water. We are on the last segment. We are waiting for the appropriate fittings to installed today. The new line under the storm drain pipe and connected to the system. The middle photo is the road towards DeSoto, showing the remaining sewer line to be installed. That's in the color green, and that's after we complete the line shown on the dark blue, which is the water. Schedule update. As I mentioned, all areas are actively being worked on. We are on the peak of production phase at this time. Roofing of the indoor pool areas are in progress. With erosion control measures to go with it. Road and parking lot has been upgraded. New sewer, water, and storms are also in progress. As you can see, it's almost there. With all the activities, many trades are working all together. We're probably running about 40 to 50 people working at the same time on the job site. Road closure update. You see the schedule on the left with all the red are the activities that's been completed. We closed the road on August 1st. We demo existing hardscape. The creek has been graded at that time. We completed that. The City Parkway and storm drain has been part of the City Parkway has been completed. The creek channel construction has been completed. So we are left to do the sewer main and putting the street back to complete the City Parkway. As you know, we closed the City Parkway scheduled on August 1st, 2022, and looking to open mid-December or earlier, everything goes well. However, we got some obstruction that we encountered that we need some new material that are not readily available. So we're gonna need all that time, but we hope to do it earlier. We will inform the public if any additional time is needed. And for public safety, the entire site, entire work site is fenced off and not accessible, but we are mindful of the maintaining emergency vehicle access in case of emergency. City Parkway is basically being detoured to El Camino. The team is regularly observing the traffic and the signal at the El Camino and Crystal Spring. That seems to be flowing well. We plan to coordinate with Caltrans if needed to adjust the signal timing. Typically receive 1 or 2 calls or email a month about the road closure. We've been addressing them and will continue to monitor them for improvements. Most of the complaints are due to the increase of vehicle on their streets, adding residents that living on those streets, and mainly in Acacia and Cypress Avenue. We've increased our monitoring frequency to help out and inform the PD as well for some of the speeding vehicles on those streets. Public outreach. Contractors doing a great job on keeping the site safe and keeping everybody around informed and monitoring the traffic flow. And they have done all the door hanger notification. They have the portable changeable message boards maintained. They added more detour signs in the area. Local traffic signs were installed on some of the corners of Cypress and Acacia Avenue as an added more detour sign. We have communicated with Google navigation system to avoid redirecting traffic to any connecting streets. We increased our frequency of our daily traffic check to every hour almost to include traffic signals and schools in the area. We are in communication with the consultant traffic engineer for any traffic and parking question, in communication with the police department to get assistance on potential violators. Field contact numbers are available on all project signs and city websites. On-site representative is present every day at the trailer offices. Project website is regularly being updated. Calls and emails are being answered and addressed on a regular basis. Change order report. We have a total approved change order of $1,579,904.18. Completed $1,372,414.84 out of that approved change order. 37.53% is unforeseen. 51.8% is the resolution of discrepancies. 9.8% is public safety and convenience, and less than 1% on requests in value engineering credit costs. Unforeseen and unknown are mostly disposal of the contaminated soil that we continue to encounter on new excavation. Contaminated soil had to be disposed in a Class 2 dump due to presence of high level of petroleum and pesticides. 9.8% are related to public safety and convenience. That includes the tree removal that we have to remove to keep that hazard out of the building, sidewalk at the DeSoto Way, and disposal of the hazardous concrete that we found under the building. 51.8% coming from the RFI as the contractor pieced together the intent of the design, considering constructability, maintainability of the building's plumbing, foundation system. Changes, additions, and adjustment had to be implemented. Happens in the pool pumps, overall drainage system, also to accommodate changes on the steel framing system and meet the latest seismic load requirements and code. Project budget update. We are operating within the approved budget of $60,540,228. That's the total of all the total costs, total construction costs, and a contingency. Spent to date is about $27,031,779.69. That's about 44.65%. That included all the invoices submitted, approved, and recommended for payment. The spent to date included pre-construction and construction expenses. To date, the approved budget in this presentation is broken down into 3 categories. As you can see, it's the soft cost, project contingency, construction costs. Soft costs included design fees, all the other consultant fees, project management fees, construction management fees, permit fees, environmental services, and other project-related tasks and projects costs, which are about 64% spent. Majority of the expenses are pre-construction related, which is the 49% or the 48.84%. If you add the 15.15, that brings you to about 64% spent of the project's costs. So blue represent the pre-construction phase expenses, orange is the construction phase expenses, and green is the remaining balance. Construction phase cost is about 15% spent. Project contingency is at 35.8% spent, and the construction cost or the hard cost is 39.17% to this date. That's equivalent to what the contractor can bill us. We're looking good on our contingency balance. We look to complete the project on the budget unless other circumstances arises that we can control. But this time we still in good hands as far as contingency. So what's happening the next 30 days and beyond? You could probably see some of this activity already. We have, as I mentioned, the water has to be tied into the existing system. So we water tie and sewer tie in plan and road closure and on the circled area, Crystal Spring and DeSoto Way. There will be a daytime road closure, Crystal Spring between and 5. The same at the DeSoto Way and Breckner Shelter Road. Traffic will be temporarily detoured to the parking lot. At DeSoto Way near City Parkway, about a dozen residents will be notified or has been notified and that their access still be available. And the non-resident traffic will be detoured to Beckner Shelter Road through the parking lot for a few days. What's happening in the building in the next 30 days? The building grouping will be done in the next, except for a few pieces of steel frames to install. After all the big pieces of equipment is done being used inside the natatorium. What's happening on site in the next 30 days? Complete the roofing and the decking, as I mentioned earlier. Some miscellaneous joint welding. Building floor slab at the gymnasium will begin. Indoor pool shell construction will begin. The excavation. On-site utilities, truss enclosure will proceed after the 2 to 3 months. Yeah, looking for about 2 to 3 months from now, the outdoor pool excavation is expected to begin as well. What's happening off-site in the next 30 days? While working on the building, the water, sewer, and the bioretention, the road and parking lot will continue to progress. We're about 5% of the water line to be installed. We got 35% of the sewer to be installed and the bioretention. City Parkway will be reconstructed and reopened. Contractor will continue to work on the landscaping when it's open. Pedestrian bridge, street lights, and lanes road work that for public safety may require partial or full road closure depending on the planned activities after we open the City Parkway. Other related projects update. As the city manager mentioned, after the public hearing on June 28th, City Council did the resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into the power purchase agreement with Peninsula Clean Energy. The PPA draft has been submitted to the city and returned to PCE. PCE executed the contract now with all the equipment provider, which they will provide us more information to complete and finalize the PPA by November. So you can see on this schedule. So we are looking forward to coordinate the construction in early next year. Crystal Spring and Oak Street and City Parkway intersection improvement project update. This project was approved by the City Council on September 13, 2022 to proceed with the traffic signal system design. Design team proceeded with the design and 30% of the reviewed, and the designer is now working towards completing the 60%. With that schedule, we're looking forward to advertise for bid in January or February next year. Hopefully get that awarded in March and begin construction May or June. So having to coordinate that with the rock construction. As shown on the drops plan, that in addition to all the traffic signal poles that will be installed in the corners, there will be ADA curb ramps, striped pedestrian crosswalks, and the goal is to preserve existing parking spaces in the area. Other projects that we want to give the City Council an update, these are not related to rock projects, but as far as budget, but it's important to consider completing this work while the rock is in progress. During our meeting with the city manager and public works director, we identify to rehab Beckner Shelter Road because of the poor condition as shown on photo number 2. And by doing, we're gonna need to update the path and the ramp that leads you to picnic area number 14. That's picture number 1 and picture the 2 of number 1. That's the path to the Beckner Shelter Road to the picnic area number 14 and also the ADA ramp from the parking lot. We also gonna need to replace the existing pedestrian bridge with the ADA standard that connects the rock and the pool parking lot, as shown on picture number 3. And in addition, we are replacing the sidewalk that connects the Lara parking lot driveway and the city park. The total estimated cost to construct all this work is about $800,000. There's a budget to rehabilitate the Beckner Shelter Road from Measure G. The rock project contingency can be used to fund the sidewalk work, and we can phase or prioritize these projects to construct the work with available funds this year. Or the last option is to add funds to the project with the City Council approval. The work can be bid out as a low bid or negotiate with the contractor to be part of the rock project. Again, this is just a heads up, and we will provide you more detailed update once funding were identified. This will end our presentation, and thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate that. Do we have any members of the council that have questions on the presentation? Questions on the presentation? Seeing none at this time, are there any members of the public that wish to speak that are here in the audience this evening on this project or the presentation? Are there any members of the public from Zoom that wish to speak on this project or presentation?
Yes, I will be bringing in Paul Wapensky. Paul Wapensky, whenever you're ready. I apologize. Can we stop sharing the screen so that I may share the time clock perfectly? Perfect. Paul Wapensky, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. If memory serves me, this original project was budgeted for 50 million. Now it's 60 million. And I believe the foundation authorized 50 million for the project. So where's the extra $10 million coming from? And my second question is, the change order slide that you had showed that there were 1.579 million in change orders, yet it looks like there's $8.5 million that's not accounted for because you add the 50 to the 1.5, there's 8.5 up to the 60 million. So where did that other $8.5 million get spent on? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And next speaker, please.
I do not see any other virtual hands raised.
Thank you very much. We'll bring it back to council for any comments or if anyone wants to summarize something that they've heard that they'd like to ask our project manager or staff.
For the mayor.
Vice Mayor?
I think just for anybody who might be watching, can you just explain that, or maybe explain in a more eloquent way that change orders are part of the established budget, and maybe explain contingency a little bit, please?
Yeah, so we have three categories on this budget. We have the soft costs, and we have the project contingency and the hard costs. The contingency, we have 3.8 million. The construction cost is 43 million. We have about 13 million of the soft costs. If you add them all together, that's 60 million. And the contingency is funding the change order. So we are about 35% spent on the change order at this time.
And is that pretty standard at this stage in the development?
Yeah, we are about 45% complete, and we are just 35% spent on our contingency. I think that's a good sign.
And then my last two questions I ask at every committee meeting, but can you just answer for purposes of the public, are we currently on schedule and on budget?
Yes, we are operating within the budget, and we are still on our schedule to meet the deadline or complete the project by fall of 2023. Yes.
Wonderful, thank you.
Any other comments? Councilmember Salazar?
Sure, thank you. If staff could also just sort of rehash how we got from the original 50 up to the 60 and how the gap, I think that's a good point to cover and that Mr. Wapensky brought up.
Sure. Javon Grogan, City Manager. Yes, couple things to note. One, the $50 million grant from the foundation, that number was set quite a few years before the project actually went out to bid. But the total project budget is $60.5 million. It is true that the city, the San Bruno Community Foundation is providing the city of San Bruno with a grant of $50 million. The next largest sum actually comes from a community benefit agreement that we were able to negotiate with YouTube for their campus expansion at 1450 Bay Hill that is currently under construction. And so that was a $4.5 million community benefit payment that the city council allocated to the project. The next largest sum was $1.7 million from the Park and Lou Fund, a fund that was established to be the depository of fees that developments pay. And then there was, council will remember, there was an additional PG&E settlement for ex parte communications of $1 million. And so that was added to the project. And then there were various other funding sources. There was $900,000 that was residual left over from the Crestmore Neighborhood Rebuild Project. And then important to note that there are a number of water and sewer improvements that are taking place in City Parkway because City Parkway is being realigned and those projects would have ordinarily been funded by the Water and Sewer Fund. And we're just being done a little earlier because we were reconfiguring City Parkway, and so the Water and Sewer Fund are paying for their respective share of those water and sewer improvements that, while the building ties into there, those pipes serve the surrounding neighborhood both to the north and south. And so together those funds are contributing about $1 million. And so a number of funds brought us from 50 to 60 million. Again, the largest single amount was a community benefit payment from YouTube for their expansion at 1400 and 1450 Bay Hill.
Thank you for that. And also, as I recall, one of the biggest changes that we saw in the cost for this project was that initially we spoke about doing only an indoor pool, and the addition of the outdoor pool brought that price up significantly early on in the discussions.
Yeah, it certainly contributed to the construction build price of $43 million. Also worth noting that this project actually went to market at a really good time. We went to bid for this project right around when there were a lot of fears around the economy and the COVID recession. And so contractors were actually offering pretty good prices to ensure that they had work through what was looking like a recession heading into COVID. And so we were able to leverage that time period. And so how that factored out and how much the outdoor pool added with that combination of getting some better bid prices that came in lower than our engineer's estimate, I can't really answer. But overall, the construction bid, including the outdoor pool, is $43 billion.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to acknowledge the residents and their concerns about the traffic. I know they reached out to the council, and staff is doing the best that they can with the amount of traffic that's going through the neighborhood, because we got to remember a lot of parents are dropping off their kids at St. Roberts and Parkside, and that traffic still needs to go somewhere. And so keeping the road closed allows this work to proceed. There's no way you can put in a new road without closing it and all the infrastructure that's required. So I wanted to acknowledge the concerns and also thank staff for addressing them. This should go on till the middle of December, hopefully, and we'll have a brand new road, and that traffic will no longer have to go through the residential street. So just wanted to acknowledge all that work in order to do that. So thank you.
Seeing no other comments at this time, go ahead and, again, Rod, thank you very much for the presentation and the update, and thank you to staff.
You're welcome.
Have a good evening. With that, we'll move on to item C, issue proclamation declaring November 13th through the 19th, 2022 as United Against Hate Week. And I'll read part of the proclamation. Whereas the United States is a nation of immigrants whose strength comes from its diversity, and whereas the Constitution of the United States confers equality on all individuals regardless of race, gender, orientation, religion, or political beliefs, and whereas deep divisions in our country are the result of extreme ideology, further strengthening a cycle of mistrust and suspicion fueled by fear, anxiety, and insecurity. And whereas the number of hate crimes across the United States have increased dramatically over the past couple of years. And whereas the city of San Bruno stands strongly in support of our diverse community, honoring and protecting every individual, regardless of race, creed, color, gender, religion, ethnicity, nationality, orientation, or identity. And whereas education, compassion, and cooperation are key to unlocking, understanding, and embracing differences between people. And now, therefore, I, Rico E. Medina, Mayor of the City of San Bruno, do hereby proclaim the week of November 13th through the 19th, 2022, as United Against Hate Week. With that, I'm asking the city manager to come to the podium before he begins to elaborate a little bit on this slide. I want to go back in time a little bit to the city manager and I attended a northern part of the county from Daly City through Burlingame and had a meeting here in San Bruno when we hosted it, obviously pre-COVID. And at that time, the city manager had an idea that came from the East Bay, and that was exactly this: to have this declared, this program, and what it did is not only brought the other communities in this county, but the county of San Mateo itself. And that was fostered and started by the city with the city manager's idea that he brought forward, brought to me, and we brought together, and it flourished into what is now within this county. So with that, city manager.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Medina, for that, but I will actually give you the credit for that. I simply had an idea, and you introduced it to all of the mayors and other council members at a meeting that we hosted here in San Bruno. So thank you for that. And Mayor, you actually reminded me of what United Against Hate is, and if we can have that slide back up. It's been already a little long night, but I'll tell a 15-second story, which is prior to coming to the city of San Bruno, I was the deputy city manager in the city of Berkeley. And many may remember around 2016 and 2017, there were large protests in Berkeley. I happened to be the EOC director at that time. when we had people from alt-right and alt-left groups flying in to wreak havoc in the city of Berkeley, and all really connected to Cal Berkeley, and speakers expressing a point of view that other people didn't like, and the fight was on in Berkeley, and so it was civil unrest. And I got a call from the mayor's office, Mayor Jesse Arreguín in Berkeley, and said, hey, we want to fly a banner over the city council chambers, and there's going to be a big protest, as you know, outside of Martin Luther King Jr. Plaza, and we want to fly a banner. And it was sort of an interesting request, right? We're preparing for public safety, and the mayor's office wanted to fly a banner. And they created a slogan, Berkeley stands united against hate. And it caught on, and it became a nonprofit. And there are cities all across this country that are under the United Against Hate banner. And really what it is that we're sometimes so divided as a country and as regions that, you know, it's stepping up on the balcony and stepping away from our divisions and saying, let's begin by saying we're all against hate, right? Hopefully we can all just stand up and say we're against hate. And if we can't do that, we have some pretty larger problems as a society. And so I was happy when the city of Berkeley, after me becoming the city manager here, said now that this is a nonprofit and there are no cities in San Mateo County that are part of it, I raised the idea to Mayor Rica Medina, and he took up the charge, and now we have cities up and down, not just San Mateo, but Santa Clara County participating in this. And so November 13th through the 19th will be United Against Hate Week. And we here at the City of San Bruno have partnered with our library, as well as the San Francisco Fine Arts Museum, and a virtual docent tour of the Faith Ringgold exhibit at the D. Young Museum will occur virtually for our community here on November 14th at 7 p.m. And if you have not been to that exhibit, it is an amazing exhibit and a collection of Faith Ringgold works, and residents of the Bay Area can go to the D. Young free on Saturdays. And so if you can get to San Francisco, you can see this exhibit in person. In addition, we have lined up a series of authors to provide virtual presentations at schools, and that it's a partnership with San Mateo County Reads. And this year, all three authors are Native American under the slogan of Native Voices, Native Lives. And while those three authors will talk about their publications at our elementary, middle, and high schools, the presentations are available to the public, and if you register at the web address that's up on the screen, sanbruno.ca.gov/UAHW, you'll receive all the information. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Are there any comments or questions from members of the public that are here this evening? Any from the Zoom audience? There are none. I'm going to add an item. I saw it on Facebook, but it's Coat for Kids. And this is something that we've always advertised and normally bring forward, and I think it's important because of what one of the replies were. But Recology is, again, pleased to share with the City of San Bruno that we are once again holding our Coats for Kids collection distribution event this year. This is a 26-year tradition here in the City of San Bruno, which was started by Vicki Hache and her daughter Rose, and started out as over at the Recreation Center as a very small thought. And 26 years later, it is still here and going, and has continued continuously even through COVID. Donations have been dwindling over the past few years, so we need all the help we can get to ensure that all children in San Bruno have a warm coat this fall and winter. They are collecting officially through November 1st, but will never turn away donations. If residents can't make it to one of their donation locations, they are welcome to contact Recology customer service, and they will pick them up on your curbside. So again, I bring that up, and I'm sorry it's not on there, but I just saw it, and the reply was desperate need of coats. For those of us that were there last year, it was slim, and I understand the economy is tough, inflation is high, but those that can, please do. I think we've seen firsthand the good that it does and the tradition that has been kept alive and that begun by Vicki and continues on with this community as a joint effort with Recology and ourselves. So thank you for allowing me to expound upon that. But, and because I did actually add it, Vice Mayor.
I just wanted to go back to United Against Hate.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No, that's a good announcement to make. But I did just want to say thank you to especially Jennifer Dianos, who's really done a lot of work behind the scenes, and our library crew to make sure we don't just have a United Against Hate Week that is a banner or a post, but you've actually really brought quality programming to our residents and to our schools. I participated last year in one of the book readings, and I think 3 classes participated, and it was just really wonderful. So thank you for all the behind-the-scenes work. Thank you to the library team that's been working on this, because it really makes this substantive and hopefully a great experience for everybody who participates. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Is there anybody from the council in regards to the Code for Kids or the proclamation? Thank you. Okay. If not, all right, I think we've covered that all sufficiently. No hands, no audience. Okay, now we're going to move on to item 6, which is our consent calendar. All items are considered routine or implemented at an earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested. There will be one single public comment period for all items in this section unless a council member requests to pull an item for a separate vote. Are there any items to be pulled for a separate vote? Vice Mayor.
The Mayor, item 6H.
6H, pull for separate. Any other separate votes? Any items for comments or questions? Councilmember Medina.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, item 6D, as in David.
Thank you. That was 6D. Oh, City Manager?
Sure. Mayor, can I ask to pull item 6I, and we'll bring it back to council at your next meeting? I think some things came up between when the agenda was posted, and I just want the opportunity to take a little deeper dive to make sure that we have agendized the matter properly.
So the request by staff is to pull completely, no vote discussion on I. I have no problem with that. Thank you for letting us know. What I have right now, is there anything else for comment or question?
Through the Mayor, 6E, please.
E? Are there any others? Seeing and hearing none, why don't we go to D first, which was Councilmember Medina. Adopt resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for consultant services with Pavement Engineering, Inc. for pavement evaluation services for the 2021-22 street reconstruction project in the amount not to exceed $255,720. Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I submitted a question to staff earlier today. I also noted that we did get a question from the public on this item. I understand the pavement evaluation is necessary to accurately budget and efficiently determine the best, most cost-effective paving treatment. It just seems like there are some streets that are not included, that are in pretty poor shape that I've seen recently on the east side of town. Some in the avenues, some in the, I refer them to the Holy Lands. They're the area of our town that is named after all of the saints, and also within the 5th edition. So just interested in the evaluation process, and I'm not contesting that we shouldn't have this project to do the evaluation. It's just on the data that was determined, I believe, in 2020. And now we're looking at some of those streets where they're probably as bad as any other street in town. So I'll leave it with staff for that.
I'm going to ask the city manager to determine whom should respond, please.
Yes, we have asked our Public Works Director, Matthew Lee, to provide a response.
Director Lee.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Matt Lee. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of San Bruno. In response to Council Medina's question, the evaluation criteria for the selected streets is based solely on the PCI, which is the Pavement Condition Index. As part of our SB1 funding, we're required by the CTC to submit streets for that funded amount, and we slowly selected the streets based on their PCI. There may be other streets that you see within the area of the east side of town. Those might already be under other construction projects, and so they're not listed on the streets. Most notably, the Avenues projects. We've hit that part of town with a lot of pipe replacements, and so with the pipe replacement projects, those pavement areas will be overlaid and repaired as part of that effort, and so that's why they're not on some of these other streets.
Matt, can I ask you to articulate PCI for the public?
Sure. PCI is short for Pavement Condition Index. It's a methodology that is supported by the MTC on how we evaluate the pavement conditions visually. And so the Pavement Condition Index score is given by a visual inspection. And so sometimes, although the road conditions may look like the Pavement Condition Index is low, further pavement evaluation is needed in order for us to accurately assess that that type of repair may need to be made, which is a complete road rehabilitation and reconstruction. Sometimes when you do the Pavement Condition Index, when you use the Pavement Condition Index, it might not be as accurate, and therefore the pavement evaluation can help determine if a lesser, more cost-effective treatment is possible.
Continue, Councilmember.
Yeah, I just wanted to, so can streets be added to this if you were to reevaluate them? Because I know one street, the Fifth Avenue, is really in bad shape as you go north of San Bruno Avenue, so that's not included in the Avenues projects currently, is my understanding of it. Everything from Pine South is included, but there's some pretty rough streets on the north side of San Bruno Avenue, and also that being Walnut, and a couple other streets. So I just wanted to make sure, like, as we're doing this evaluation, that if we don't evaluate those streets that are in that really poor condition, then they're not going to be designed, and when will they get paved? So I just thought it would be beneficial, and I'd be interested in having that project increased to include those streets so that we can have really a comprehensive look across our city.
Yeah, so with SB1 funding, you're required by the CTC to submit the list of streets ahead of time. And so those are the streets that are allowable for SB1 funding for the 22-23 cycle. And so those are the streets we're looking at. I understand that over time, streets do deteriorate, and this is not a one-time process. This is a consistent effort. Pavement maintenance and pavement rehabilitation is a consistent effort. What we can do is we can go back and take a look and ensure that those, we can take a look at those pavement condition indexes for those roads. I'm pretty sure they did not hit the marker for being below a 40 PCI, although they may look pretty bad to the naked eye. Our intent is to repave and fix all the roads as fast as we can with the allowable funding that we're allowed. And so our goal is to continue to move forward with those. And so we can take a look at those roads, just ensure that they're not below the PCI level and should have been a part of this process. Even if we were to do the pavement evaluation, we might not be able to use the SB1 funding for that particular roadway.
I understand. I do appreciate your response. I'm satisfied with that, so thank you.
And thank you for clarifying about the SB1, because that's very specific.
Yep.
And as well, just candor, there are people who live throughout our community that find that their street is not meeting their basic needs. Is there any, Vice Mayor?
Through the mayor. Thank you for this, this staff report. I do just have some questions because we haven't heard about the paving in a little bit of time, and we've had so many questions from the community. So my first question is just around the Measure G funds, and I'm just curious, are the Measure G funds that haven't been used for paving, or have they been used for paving since 19 when it was approved? What's happened to those funds, and are they being applied to this project that we're talking about right now?
Yeah, as referenced in the staff report, we have the CIP budget sheet for this project. So for the reconstruction, we're typically, for the reconstruction projects where we reconstruct the entire road, we use SB1 funding. Yeah. Mainly for the rehabilitation projects, which is typically the 2-inch overlays. Those are the ones where we're going to be using Measure G funds. There's another CIP project where all the funds that have not yet been spent are a part of that project. We're undergoing a huge effort to reconstruct streets, repave streets, and slurry seal them. So we're doing a 3-prong attack through all those streets, and there will be 3 projects that we're hoping to try to put out as quickly as we can.
Then my next question is just around the industry standard. Is this process an industry standard? I know we had a wonderful report from Haywan Ritchie about 2 years ago, and I know she has experience in Daly City. Daly City's roads look amazing. Is this something that is normally done prior to moving forward with a multi-year project?
Yes, so it is industry standard to do a pavement evaluation for roads that need reconstruction because you would not want to spend money when it's not necessary. I think the thing that is more unique in this measure is that instead of selecting the specific roads that we can do for $990,000, we opted to do a pavement evaluation for all the streets because we've heard the public that they want their roads repaved or repaired as quickly as possible. So with this list of SB1 streets that we have, if there are ones after the pavement evaluation that indicate that it does not need to be reconstructed and just needs to be rehabbed, we will try to include that into the pavement rehabilitation project, which is the overlay. And so that's our attempt to try to get as many roads fixed as quickly as possible.
And how is this different than the report we received, I would say maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, but it already had the PCI numbers on it and the percentages. So is this just a more, the staff report explained that this is, their engineers are gonna come in, they're gonna say this needs to be, I'm forgetting the exact term, but it's a different level of work, right? And it's a different expense. But I guess the question, slurried, I think is the word that has been used in the past. But is this something additional to the PCI that I thought was already established?
Sure.
City Manager, if you could.
Thank you, Mayor. Public Works Director Matt Lee wasn't here 2 years ago, so that question probably isn't fair to him. so let me.
Fair.
No, totally. Absolutely. So, Vice Mayor Mason, what you're referencing is you had a presentation from staff, a very comprehensive one, approximately a year and a half ago, that talked about how the city approaches road reconstruction. And so that presentation talked about pavement condition index, PCI, that is a 0 to 100 scale, and how all of our roads are rated based on that scale. That presentation also talked about that there are various treatments. Sometimes it's a slurry seal, a light coat of a oil-based slurry aggregate to protect the roadway. Other times you're grinding down 1 to 2 inches, and it's called a grind and overlay. Other time it's a full reconstruction where you're going down 6 to 8 to sometimes 12 inches and redoing the entire base of the roadway, and that's when your roads are really failed. And what that presentation talked about is that every year we have a set pot of money. We know that that pot of money has increased now that we have Measure G. But every year, strategic decisions have to be made on what roads are repaved. And you do not apply all of your available funds to the roads that are in the worst condition, because the cost to slurry seal versus the cost to completely rehab a road is sometimes a 10 times difference. And sometimes you have to spend a little bit of your money to keep good roads good or okay roads to improve them to be better so that water doesn't infiltrate. And now a fix that would have cost $300,000 if you waited a year or 2 years will cost $1.5 million. And so every year we're sometimes slurry sealing, we're doing road reconstruction, or we're doing a grind and overlay. It's a really composite, and it's really based off of the pavement condition index that MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, requires that cities use. And so what you're receiving tonight is a requested approval of an agreement for a consultant to undertake pavement engineering connected with the SB1 projects. And as the Public Works Director mentioned, those are reconstruction projects. And so you're approving an engineer to do some work to study the correct treatment and how far we need to go down to reconstruct. And so this is very much in line with that presentation you received a year and a half ago. It's just one component. We're really just talking about the SB1 projects and reconstructing.
Thank you for that, but I think the question though, it still remains open, which is what, if we already have the PCI numbers, and we know the streets are probably gonna get worse, I mean, in a couple of years, what are we doing now that's different?
So the biggest thing we're doing now that's different is we have a little bit more money. We don't have enough, and even when Measure G went to the voters, it was clear that even if all of Measure G was applied to the streets, we would still need more money to get our roads to an average PCI of 80. So the biggest thing that we have different now that we didn't have a few years ago is more money. And so we're able to allocate more, which you did. I believe in this year, I'm just going off the top, but you allocated over $6 million to roadways, which was certainly the most that you've allocated, I believe, in the last 10 years in a single year. And getting that work out on the street is in part connected to the action you're taking tonight, which is approving a contract for an engineer we have the PCI. We know, for example, the roadway is rated at a 50, but we need to hire the engineer to do the detailed study to develop a specific treatment for that roadway, and then we develop construction documents, and then we go to bid and we get the work done. And so this is just sort of one step in that multi-step process, and we are on our way to improving roads. This is a cruise ship that unfortunately doesn't turn on a dime, and it's going to take some time for the public to see the progress. You've certainly done your job in allocating the funds, and we're along the path to get those projects analyzed, designed, so then we can get a contractor out there to build.
Thank you, City Manager Grogan. As he so eloquently expressed, the pavement evaluation is used in addition to the pavement condition index evaluation process. The pavement condition index evaluation process is a visual one, where you go and you look at the road and there's certain things you look for, which is depressions and cracks and alligator cracking, and you assign a pavement condition to it. It's not a perfect system, but it's a good, quick way to measure our streets so we can actually plan the entire network of how we want to make the repairs. When we get down to the streets that we select that are of low PCI and we identify that they need to be reconstructed, what we are trying to do as engineers is to make sure we apply the most cost-effective solution to that road. Like City Manager Grogan said, to reconstruct a street could be $1.5 million because we did a visual inspection and said that the PCI was low. But if we do a pavement evaluation and it indicates that the subsurface and the substructure of the road is not damaged and it doesn't need to be repaired, we could potentially fix that road for $300,000 because it's structurally sound, and then we can just repave the surface. So to the resident, you can get the same looking road that you can drive on for $300,000 or $150,000. But the difference between that is this pavement evaluation that you need to do, which is kind of core sampling and looking at the road base and structure and a lot of geeky engineering tests. So that's the purpose of this evaluation. The reason why we're doing all the SB1 streets that we submitted as part of CTC is, like we said, we're trying to accelerate as many roads repairs as possible, right? And so if it's possible to move roads from reconstruction to pavement rehabilitation, and we have Measure G funds now to do so. We're going to do that.
Thank you. And then my other questions are just about procurement. So in the staff report, it referred to this was sent out to qualified candidates. How many qualified candidates was this sent out to?
I do not have that list, but we do post the RFP for the public. We post it on our website and then certain bid boards. I think if we typically do, we would send it to firms that have bidded or submitted proposals in the past and have done work with us in the past. I don't have that exact count, but I can get that back to you through the city manager.
Great. And
Sure. And what the Public Works Director articulated when he said bid boards is that there are systems that we send all of our bids to that contractors know to go to, because sometimes putting it on our website isn't sufficient. And so we can post to that bid board, and contractors that are in the paving world check that board routinely, virtual board.
thank you. And then of the two that responded, this one has experience in Berkeley and Concord. Is the experience doing the same work that's being done today?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments in regards to this item, which was item D? Seeing and hearing none, we're going to go to item E, fiscal year 21-22, quarter one building division customer service survey results. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for bringing this back to us. I think it's really helpful and reassuring to see some of the responses. I do just want to point out that one of the requests was around a question on the length of time that it's taking the process, and I don't see that. I didn't see that in the questionnaires that was made by one of the public commenters. And that is one of the biggest complaints that we do get in San Bruno about the permitting process, is the amount of time that it takes to begin and end a project. The other comment I just wanted to make and maybe answer, maybe a question really, is as great as it is to see 75% on the customer service, there's very little differential between the good, the excellent, and poor, meaning there's nothing in good. There's only 6% in good, and then satisfactory 0, but then it jumps to 18.75% in poor. And there's a similar number here where the question is, was the building permit approval process described to you by city staff at the beginning of the process? And while it's great to see 73%, the no is still 26%. And provided that we're contracting so many of these services out and being promised excellent service, the numbers do appear quite low. So I'm not sure if staff wants to comment, but that's not reassuring at this time.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Does staff have anything? The city manager?
No, we implemented a survey, and the Vice Mayor noted a question around time. We'll go back and look at that. And certainly, the responses at this early time are not significant. So the 18 response poor is 3 people, and the nearly 27% response no on the explaining the process at the beginning is 4 people. And so certainly the percentages are high, but even one person, saying that they thought we didn't do an effective job is significant, and absolutely that's why we do these surveys and note it.
Any other questions coming, Councilmember Medina?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there weren't that many responses, right, in the amount of time. There was, over the months, was it around 16 responses? And that's like 3 or 4 a month. So what can we do to encourage more people to participate in, so we have a bigger data set so that we would be able to say, okay, we really are there. We are making improvement. And I understand this is the first, I guess, quarter that we're actually having it. So maybe coming up with ideas how to encourage people to take the survey, because there's not that many people actually doing it.
Yeah. Thank you,
City Manager.
Councilmember Medina. I have a confession. Every time I'm at the grocery store and they say, please take my survey, when they give me my receipt, I never do it. And so it's a constant problem, right? You know, people are served and sometimes excellent service or not so excellent service, they don't fill out surveys. You know, at the risk of telling an idea before we've actually worked out, can we do it and what it would take. One of the things I have talked to staff about looking into is having those kiosks where you sometimes see where it just has three buttons, a green button for good, a yellow button for not so good, and a red button for bad, right? And as people leave the counter, have a big sign, you know, press a button. Was your service green, yellow, or red? You know, I think you have to make it easy on people. People don't oftentimes value going to a website and filling out a 5 or 10 question survey. You know, thank you, I'm done, I'm on to the next thing. And so know that we're looking at ways to just, you know, maybe get a different level of feedback, but some feedback, knowing how people react to surveys.
One last thing, Mr. Mayor. And so these are the inspection survey, but for the permitting survey, we don't have a permitting survey, right?
It's everything, and so it's one survey for all services by the department, planning, building.
Got it, okay.
Any
So
other-
everybody out there, take your survey so we really know what's happening.
Take all
It's
surveys.
really important.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, this was for items 6A through 6G, understanding that I has been pulled. Are there any members of the public, both present or via Zoom, that wish to comment on anything on consent on those items?
I see one virtual hand is raised.
On consent 6A through 6G, please go ahead. Bring the person in.
I will now be bringing in Jeremy Sarnecki. Jeremy, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Greetings, Council. I would just like to comment on the staff report on the PCI index. A couple different thoughts popped into my head as I was watching you talk about the status of our streets, the status of funding to implement street improvements and street rehabilitation. So I'm just going to go through them one at a time. I want to play off of what Marty Medina was saying about the Holy Lands of East San Bruno. Well, I was actually just in the United Kingdom, and a lot of the streets I see in Pacific Heights and in Monteverdi remind me of the cobblestone streets of Europe. And one thing I think that's lacking in this PCI index, especially when we're talking about what is cost effective, you know, the cost to lay down some slurry seal can be 1/10 the amount of a full-on street rehabilitation. What I see here is certain parts of our city, call them the forgotten parts of our city, and maybe even in District 1, go neglected for decades at a time. I'm not talking 20 years, I'm talking 30 plus years, that residents have never seen the streets repaved. And so what I really think we need to look at, maybe there is something that's already been proposed, because I think even with the added Measure D funds, is a city that's trying to tread water. We have streets that are in need of repair, that need to be maintained by a slurry seal. And yet the lack of funding that we've experienced in the past means that the most cost-effective solution allows us to neglect the needs of our city. And that goes on and on and on. So if the council could, if their role in the process, and if they can highlight parts of the city that maybe are not prioritized due to the PCI index, but they feel it is important that they receive this funding. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
No other virtual hands are raised.
Thank you. So again, that is for items 6A through 6G. Keep in mind that H has been pulled for a separate vote. I has been, I pulled as staff has asked. So any action from council?
Through the chair, I'll make a motion to approve items A through G.
Second?
Motion Salazar, second Hamilton to approve consent 6A through 6G. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Any opposed? I have 5-0, unanimous approval for 6A through 6G. Now that will bring us to item 6H, adopt resolution authorizing the city manager to convert an existing legal secretary position assigned to the city attorney's office to a management analyst 1/2 position. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, so thank you for pulling this for a separate vote. I think in reviewing the staff report that I feel very uneasy about this request. It's really important to just kind of give a little bit of background to the public that when we went through the budget season last year, we were asked to ensure that we still had an assistant city manager position and to also establish the human resources director position. And in doing so, there was a position called the community development manager removed from that budget. So prior to the actual day that it came to the council, there were discussions around including the community development manager position back in if we were able to take funds from Artichoke Joe's that would be coming up. The council agreed to take those funds from the Artichoke Joe's money, which is the only way we were able to ensure that there was budget for that community development manager position. The reason that's important is because we had been told for over a year and a half that the community development manager position was integral to ensuring that our downtown would receive the businesses that would be appealing to the public and be able to truly handhold those businesses through the permitting process. In those, year and a half to 2 years now, there are some wonderful businesses that have come to our downtown, and there are others that I think had we had a community development manager, we may have had some different fits for those locations, especially in the last couple of months. So with that said, we also asked and spent almost $100,000 on a third party to do a full analysis of the police department, in which they came back with a couple of recommendations, nothing too substantive, but one of the essential ones was that the police department did need a management analyst. And that's important to note because in the coffee with the chiefs that I attended, our chief of police actually did all of the analysis or received and retrieved all the data that went to the study that was done, which took an exceptional amount of time from other things he could have been working on for someone in his position. So it made sense that the management analyst position is one that would be recommended as part of this review. When our city attorney announced that he was going to be retiring, we did decide as a council that we would go to outside counsel, and Ms. Ortiz joined us. And with that procurement came administrative assistance, which is the reason that at this time we don't need a legal secretary. Over the last 2 years, we have approved a special assistant to the city manager. We've approved the assistant city manager position. The city manager also has an executive assistant. So those are 3 positions that are over $500,000 at this point. And looking at the needs of the city, looking at the fact that the city clerk also now reports to the city manager, which makes an additional assistant, not just the city manager in an administrative role, but a very substantive role that the city clerk plays to the city as a whole, especially during election cycles and daily to the council that's up here. I don't see the management analyst position as a fit in the city manager's department when we really could allot those funds to these other needs that we have. So one, in the staff report, it does say that any alternate suggestions that would be made, and what I would really like my fellow council members to consider is applying those funds to the community development manager position and then relieving the funds from AJ's that would go back into the general fund that we could spend on another item, or applying the management analyst position to the police department as the impact justice recommendations were made. There have otherwise not been any other recommendations that would, outside of what we saw in the staff report, request that a legal secretary position fund go to a management analyst position within the city manager's office, who already currently has a number of substantive positions. This council has been incredibly supportive of the city manager, and well-deserved. I'm not saying that that's not well-deserved, but I do feel uneasy placing these funds into another position in the city manager's office when we have these other two positions, one of which was a recommendation and the other one from a third party, and the other one that council really had no other choice but to take from funds that we received or not have the position at all. So I'm open to a discussion, obviously, on the topic.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Before I open it to council, is there anything staff wishes to say at this time, or we'll hear from council?
Yeah.
City Manager.
Sure. Javon Grogan, City Manager. Yes, certainly if the council would like to discuss, I do think that there's some articulation maybe that can be provided around the request, because I think that it's important to know the reasons for the request and what the duties would do. So, and sort of backing up to go forward, why are we here? As the Vice Mayor mentioned, the city did shift from an in-house city attorney to a contract city attorney, currently on an interim basis. And in that shift, the legal secretary, who had previously reported to the city attorney a city position, went to become a direct report under the city manager's office, because a contractor cannot supervise a city staff. And so as of today, status quo, the city has a legal secretary. We had a legal secretary before when there was a staff city attorney. And so while there was a reporting change, there was not really a duties change at all. It was mentioned that now that the city has a contract city attorney, that the city no longer needs a legal secretary. I don't think that that's I would not agree with that assessment. There are a number of duties that's spelled out in the staff report that the current legal secretary does that need to continue to reside and be done. And so it's also worth noting that the request to convert a legal secretary to a management analyst is not a request to add a new position at all. It's actually a request to change one classification to another. But just a note on some of the duties that the legal secretary currently does that the management analyst would do. It would be invoice processing, workers' compensation, supporting the city's workers' compensation administrator to receive and process all medical injury claim packets, as well as declination packets for submission to that administrator, coordination with the Human Resources Department on all work restriction, reviews and circulates work status reports, and ensures proper workers' compensation, leave, and classifications. The legal secretary currently is the administrator and tracking of all certificates of insurance from our insurance providers, as well as providing city's certificate of insurances when we're asked for those. Weapons petitions, the current legal secretary supports weapons petitions that the police department issues anytime there's a mental health related weapons pleading. They draft pleadings, supports the city attorney's review, and files those with the court and required time frame. The position also supports all city property damage claims, and so central processing of all city damage claims, coordinating with the police department, the public works department, as well as the city attorney and other involved parties. The position supports drafting and sending demand letters to third parties and insurance companies. The position also supports restitution claims with the district attorney's office, monitoring all claims for payment, and works with appropriate personnel to resolve when there's a non-payment. The position also supports coordinating and tracking third-party claims against the city, processing and circulating those claims and reviewing those with the city attorney and working with the city's risk pool provider. As also noted in the staff report, there are currently some administrative functions that are provided by the legal secretary. With a shift to a management analyst, some of those duties can be separated out. There is administrative personnel within the city manager's office now that can take over some of the phone responsibilities. Our current contract city attorney does have a legal secretary that can help with some calendar scheduling. The position currently does public records request and subpoena processing and administering those. I am shifting those duties to the city clerk, and so that will relieve the position of those responsibilities. Oftentimes, a city clerk will provide services for records, requests, and subpoenas. However, one of the new duties that I do intend to assign to the position is supporting with our citywide risk management program. The position already supports our risk pool, and it would work with all city departments to lower our risk and reduce injury, as well as support the development and implementation of risk reduction policy citywide. The position would work with the city's risk pool to implement best practices in risk reduction, and the new role will be a major improvement in how the city supports risk management. And so it's just important to note that there are functions that the current legal secretary does that will not go away, and shifting to a management analyst, as noted in the staff report, is a total annual increase of $5,200. That's the only additional appropriation or the only additional cost that's being requested, and a appropriation of that budgeted amount is not requested in the current fiscal year because we can use salary savings. And so I know the Vice Mayor mentioned the Community Development Manager. It's our Economic Development Manager position that the council certainly desired. That position is currently being recruited for. As the council knows, we have been recruiting for that position. We had a failed recruitment. We had two candidates that we offered it to, and they didn't take the position for various reasons. But in the latest round of labor negotiations, council did increase the salary for that position, and that position is currently out on the market and on our website, and hopefully we'll find a viable candidate for that position. And so just respectfully to the city council, I think it's important to note that the functions provided by our legal secretary position, many of those will remain. The management analyst classification is a broad range classification. Actually, all of the duties that a legal secretary does can be provided and done by a management analyst. And as noted in the staff report, it provides better internal alignment with other positions, and it actually increases the viability of potential candidates. And it's important to note that the request is being made irrespective of a shift from a in-house or contract city attorney model. The position can do everything a legal secretary can do, and actually a little bit more because it's broader. And so it is not adding a totally new body count. And lastly, I did confirm that I'm okay to say this. I'm happy to announce that our current legal secretary, Lupita Herrera, has been promoted to city clerk, and she will join you as your city clerk. And so I was happy to make that appointment. And the position we're talking about either leaving as a legal secretary, upgrading to a management analyst, or altogether potentially eliminating it for another position is the position that she used to occupy. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Mason.
So I appreciate that explanation, and congratulations to Lupita. That's a great step for you. I do just want to say, and I've always supported PRAs going to the city clerk, so I'm glad that's happening now. But I think if you know, and looking at the job description that's attached and looking at the duties, and knowing that we have a few positions now in the Human Resources Department and that operations fall under the city manager, It's not unheard of for workers' comp and risk management to go under human resources, and that's a decision for the city manager. And it's also not unheard of that the workers' compensation normally goes through a third-party administrator. And I believe it does here, correct? Is that right? We're not litigating workers' comp cases in-house.
While we have a third-party administrator that supports analysis with attorneys and investigators, there's a significant amount of analytical work that happens, and currently that's done by a legal secretary. It can be done by a management analyst. I would absolutely agree with you. Our HR department is understaffed. It has been for quite some time. You know, we could probably look at many, many city departments that are understaffed.
Yeah, so I would still stand by my comments. I mean, maybe it is time to look at the Human Resources Department, what they can take on now that you're hiring for the positions, and determine whether these might be included within those positions. But the fact that there is an opening because of the leaving of our new city clerk, and I don't believe I said that we don't need the legal secretary. We may at some point. But the fact that part of the procurement was that there'd be assistance provided with the new city attorney, and then seeing these duties and knowing that these duties can actually go under another department that's currently has a couple of unoccupied positions, I'd prefer to look at the funds and determine where those funds can go that, one, have been recommended by a third party, or that have been recommended by you for the last 3 years as a necessity to bringing up our downtown. And then should we need this position again in the future, then it can come back to us. But at this point, it just, I just can't be in support of it. There are so many needs, and we just can't fulfill all of them.
Other members of the council with comments or questions? Seeing none? Okay, am I correct? I just want to make sure. Okay, for me, I'll speak for myself, of course, and then, of course, we're certainly going to open it to the public. The word the Vice Mayor uses, uneasy, I would agree with that. I don't know if I would agree that the management analyst needs to be with the PD, because there are still positions that are not been restored, and I think those are most important. It sounds like we are still moving around. There was an announcement made about the legal secretary, well, I guess city clerk. We have the HR manager who has served the city well, and then that position is going to be analyzed. As far as with workers' comp, I believe that should be in HR. I think this needs to be a broader look and review of all of it, and to see how everything fits, which again I think is better at budget time, and I think it's better when we're setting priorities than at this stage. So, is there any other questions or comments? I'm going to open it to the. Yeah, I'll go ahead. I didn't think anybody did.
Through the mayor.
Councilmember Hamilton.
I actually am supportive of the proposed change here. The city manager and I discussed it in detail during our one-on-one, and then all of the facts that were presented to me during that meeting were corroborated in the staff report that I read over the weekend. And regarding the management analyst position that was recommended for the police department, you know, I will be supportive of that when it's requested. But to me, I would want to see the request for that to come from our police chief. Our police chief is the one who best knows what the needs are in the police department and when those are needed. And you know, at a future point, I'm sure he will be coming to council with that request. Maybe during the next budget cycle, maybe the one after. It's really at his discretion, because he has to run his department with the funds that are available. So I don't want to. I don't think it's the position of the council to force that decision for the police chief. And similarly, that's why supportive of making this change because, we're, entrusting the city manager to use the resources at his disposal to run his department and to run the city. And I don't, if this was a brand new position that we were looking at and trying to fund, and he was, that would be a different conversation, but it isn't. This is a reclassification. It's going to cost $5,200 annually, only less than that, $3,100 for this fiscal year, and I am satisfied with the explanation of why it is needed, and the distribution of the tasks from the former legal secretary to these other positions makes sense, and I don't have any reason to disagree with the request.
Okay. At this time, is there any members of the public present or virtually that would like to speak on item 6H?
No virtual hands are raised.
Okay, and I will get right back to the Vice Mayor. I do want to say that I did speak to the city attorney yesterday, city manager Saming. We spoke today in regards to this item, and I have read the staff report, so just wanted that noted. And then Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's not unheard of for this council to add positions or change positions without the recommendation being made, as was done this year in the budget cycle by 3 council members. So it wouldn't be the first time, and I just want to make that clear for the record. There was a position added at the end of the budget cycle that had not been a recommendation of any of the staff. With that said, I would like to put a motion on the table to continue this item to a future date when staff can come back with a more, I guess, a better, what's the word I would use? A better plan for how these duties can be delegated, both within the existing recommendation, and if the legal secretary position was not funded, then where would they be delegated?
Is there a second? I'll second it. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no?
No.
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 So it is 3-2 with the motion not passing, and the motions were for yeses from the vice mayor and the mayor, noes from the council members Salazar, Hamilton, and Medina. And I'm saying that because it's with the masks and also it's clear. I've been asked to do that. Okay, with that, is there other action from the council on H?
Through the mayor, I'd like to make a motion to accept consent items 6H.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made Hamilton, seconded Salazar to approve the resolution for H. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
No.
No. So it is a 3-2. The noes were the mayor and the vice mayor.
Can I just ask a follow-up question, Mayor?
Of course.
Mayor, for clarity? So sometimes we come back to budget and we're told that there's a position that was frozen sometimes many, many years ago and sometimes not. So I just want to be clear that when this conversion happens, will there be, in a year, will we be told there was a legal secretary position, but that was, but to be fully staffed, we're still going to need the legal secretary position? Because I see the word converting, and I just want to be clear for the record what this means exactly so that we don't get to budget season and we're told that this is an unfilled position later.
Sure.
City manager?
I'll be extremely clear by the word convert. It means to convert, to change one from the other. So the legal secretary will become a management analyst position. And there's certainly no intent on my part to come back and ask for a legal secretary position.
And the legal secretary position will become the management analyst position, but is currently not filled because the legal secretary became the city clerk.
If we were speaking tomorrow, that would be true, but yes, in concept, that's true.
So you will be hiring a new individual that will be reporting to the city manager's office.
We will be filling the management analyst role. It will become a vacant position when the current incumbent of the legal secretary position is promoted to a city clerk, and we will be filling that role. And the position, home, will continue to be the city attorney's office. The only reason why it's reporting to the city manager's office is because we switched from an in-house attorney to a contract attorney, and the contractor cannot supervise city staff and process the necessary paperwork. And so the home for the position is, on a daily basis, the city attorney's office, but the supervisor is the city manager.
All right, so that concludes our consent, keeping in mind that item I was pulled and will come back at a later time. That moves us on to item 7, and I'm going to assume that for my colleagues, we can continue. We don't need a break, because I will be getting one. So.
You can ask for a break, go for it.
Okay. Just want to check before we get it. Let's take a 5-minute break, just so people can take care of what they need to, and then return quickly in about 5 minutes, please. We'll be in recess. All right, let's reconvene the city council meeting from recess, and there's been a request, and it is permissible. We are on item 7, but we're going to go ahead and move up item 8, which is the conduct of business first, and then we will move to item 7. So on item 8, conduct of business.
Reappoint expired members and make new appointments to fill current vacancies on commissions, boards, and committees.
Okay, thank you. Any reports from staff? Should I just go? All right. Just for the community's perspective, we've had interviews for positions. Some of these positions are those that have expired. They're on a 4-year term, and so folks were asked, do you want to reapply? Those that were interested have reapplied and or been interviewed, and then there were also a call for individuals to go ahead and apply for new positions. So as we have done that, and I appreciate and thank staff and my colleagues who met this last Saturday from 8:30 to 12:30, and thank you to all of those who've applied as well as interviewed on Saturday and tonight. There are 3 areas that we would be voting on this evening: Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Citizens Crime Prevention Committee, and Planning Commission. I'm going to make a suggestion and recommendation that on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, that we reappoint Cecilia. I know there is a slide if we need it. Appoint Matthew and Nina. This would leave one position open with a partial term that would expire in 2024. On the Citizens Crime Prevention Committee, to reappoint Rhonda, Robert, and Deanna, and hold on one position until there's another interested applicant who's asked to interview also for another committee commissioner board that they're interested in. And finally, with the Planning Commission, to reappoint Rick, Marco, and Gerald, knowing that we need to recruit, Gerard, that we need to recruit for an open position that we have no applicants for. That's what I'm putting before the council to see if there's any concurrence with that.
I second.
That's my motion with a second. So motion mayor, second vice mayor. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That is a 5-0 unanimous. Thank you to those who have served, who have been reappointed, and thank you to those who have been appointed. With that, we will move back. Oh, and you know what I didn't do? I didn't ask for public comment before we voted. So that was my error because everything was working. Is there any public comments on the appointment process under the conduct of business, both here, please step forward, Janet, and then virtually?
Yeah, I'm on the Emergency Preparedness Committee.
Yep, come to the mic.
Oh, sorry, I'm on the Emergency Preparedness Committee, and Ron Lepettis and myself had run out of our 4-year term, and we both reapplied, and I didn't hear that you had okayed our reappointment to the committee.
We're not taking up those bodies yet. We're only taking up the Bicycle and Pedestrian, Citizens Advisory, Citizens Crime Prevention, and Planning Commission only tonight. We still have, hold on.
Further point?
Hold on, please. We still have interviews tomorrow for the other bodies, and we'll be bringing those back. So these were the first critical ones because terms were expiring, and they would have gone below a quorum, and therefore they may not be able to conduct business.
Yeah, we would still have a quorum on our committee.
That's why we're not bringing that one up. It's not as, these are the critical ones that we need for quorum purposes.
Thank you for the...
You're not a problem.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking. Okay, with that, are there any virtual?
No virtual hands are raised.
Okay, thank you. With that, then we will go back to item 7, public hearing.
Item 7A, hold public hearing to 1, introduce, read by title only, and waive further reading of an ordinance of the City of San Bruno, amending Article 3, zoning of Title 12, land use of the municipal code by adding Chapter 12.265, Bay Hill Specific Plan Area Development Impact Fee, and amending Chapter 12.260, Development Impact Fee, and 2, adopt a resolution of the City of San Bruno setting the rate of the Bay Hill Specific Plan Area Development Impact Fee.
Before we start, the Assistant City Manager will take over. I have a comment. Where I live, believe it or not, is also within the parameter of this project that has been in the past. So to be safe, I am going to go ahead and recuse myself and step down and turn it once over to the vice mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Medina. Do you want to go ahead and start the presentation? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, honorable council members. I'm Darcy Smith, Assistant City Manager, back to make the final presentation of the night. This is a public hearing on the Bay Hill Specific Plan Area Development Impact Fee. I'll be making the beginning and the end presentation, but I am joined by Jason Moody, the city hired consultant, who's a managing principal for EPS, who has worked both on the Bay Hill Specific Plan on other projects in the city, including the citywide area development impact fees, which the City Council previously approved. So, let's see if this technology works. Let's see. I think we're having some glitching here, so maybe next slide. So, I'll try to make this quick because I know it's late, but I wanted to cover the objective of this meeting, which is a public hearing item, quick background, why we're here tonight. I'll cover the ordinance and the resolution, and then Jason will step up and cover what I think is the most exciting part of it, the nexus study and the impact fee calculations and the fee levels and those calculations, which are really important. And then we'll end with next steps and tonight's recommended action. Next slide. So there's a big city team. They always make me present, but we wouldn't be here tonight if it weren't for the work of Jovan Grogan, City Manager, Tricia Ortiz, Interim City Attorney, Bobby McGee, the Finance Director, Haywan Ritchie, the City Engineer, Deputy Director of Public Works, Matt Lee, who also assisted with this, the Director of Public Works. But a lot of the credit goes to Matt Neubaumer, Senior Planner. He has been working, as you know, on the YouTube Bay Hill Specific Plan for years and saw this through to the end, working with me recently, but really has been shepherding this effort along since the specific plan got adopted. So a lot of credit goes to him. So the objective tonight is to hold a public hearing. We're going to introduce, read by title only, and wait for the reading of the ordinance that would amend the municipal code. This is the zoning code, chapter 12, which has a brand new chapter, the Bay Hill Specific Plan Area Development Impact Fee, and then minor amendments to an existing chapter 12.260 development impact fees, which I'll talk about why we're doing that. And then adoption of the resolution that actually sets the rates. Next slide. So quick background. Again, why are we here tonight? Well, almost a year ago, the City Council adopted the Bay Hill Specific Plan. And that guides future development in this 92-acre plan area for the next 20 years. So really important keynote, this only applies to the small area, not the whole city. We're not changing those fees, the rates, just the amendments are very minor to that. This area, as you know, allows for 2.46 million square feet of office development over 20 years. Housing units, 573 housing units, so you'll see impact fees for those units, and establishes goals, policies, and development standards for this specific plan area as you adopted last year. So why are we here tonight? Well, there was this fun implementation chapter, and while implementation chapters often sit on our desks at City Hall for a few years, this one was really, really important because we have permits that we are processing right now in a development agreement that we're bound to implement these costs and fees. So that specific plan chapter did include the table that you see tonight, the capital improvement plan, and that's really the backbone of this fee. So take a good look at that. But I want to emphasize no changes have been made, and a lot of that heavy work, as you know, on that list of improvements was done over many years, and a lot of it came from studies that we did through our consultants, looking at all the important things like transportation improvements, but also the environmental impact reports. I just want to emphasize that, again, this list is not a new list. It comes from the specific plan. And because we had that big list with all these improvements needed, there's a policy that calls for this area impact fee to fund these specific costs associated with this infrastructure. So again, we contracted with EPS to provide the technical support along with our transportation consultants, Fair and Peers, to prepare this nexus study. But I want to emphasize, nothing you're really seeing on the list of improvements is new. It all came before you last year, and I think you had many robust conversations about that. So impact fees, one of my favorite things in the city because it's how we hold new development accountable for their impacts. You hear a lot about, new growth is going to cause traffic, and new growth is going to affect our water supply. New growth is going to affect our sanitary sewer pipes. Well, these are one-time fees assessed on new development, housing and commercial, paid to the city to fund new public facilities required to serve that new growth. So again, it's how we hold new development accountable for the impacts on our public facilities. The fees are set by council based on the nexus calculations, which again, Jason will talk more about. And the revenues must be used to fund public facilities. These funds are in very, very special accounts, which is why you heard me reference the finance directors involved, and they're used for very specific purposes. There are some provisions for borrowing across funds, but it has to be used to fund the public facilities infrastructure that you see in that table. Next slide, or next item. So we can't fund existing deficiencies. That's just really important. We talked about all those streets with the poor pavement, right? While those streets are in existing neighborhoods where there isn't new growth, well, that's an existing deficiency. In Bay Hill, there's new construction, and that creates needs for the new growth, if that makes sense. We still have a citywide impact fee, and I want to talk about that because I could talk about that for a long time. But I want to emphasize this is just for Bay Hill area. And these fees are heavily regulated by state law. The Mitigation Fee Act, Government Code, Section 6600, that's actually a really interesting act if you ever want to stay up late. It's one of the most interesting pieces of state law, again, around these fees and around how city councils can use them and state annual reporting requirements. So most cities and counties across the state have these. So this Bay Hill Area Development Impact Fee Program is important to note. That's another separate account. That's independent and in addition to the citywide fees. So these are like piled on top of those fees. And it's sort of important to note, well, why are they different? Why couldn't you just add them into the citywide fees? Again, if you look at that list, it's projects that are mostly, but not always 100% for the Bay Hill area. One example is a new traffic signal at San Bruno Avenue in Traeger. Mostly serves the plan, not 100%, but identified as required by the specific plan through that robust analysis of traffic impacts, et cetera. But so this is something the Bay Hill Area Diff would fund. In contrast, the citywide impact fees funds things that are also very important to the city, like a new fire station, right, which serves half of the city, right? We've got 2 fire stations. It may also serve the Bay Hill plan. Does that make sense? So citywide is citywide, and this is just Bay Hill. So that's just really important to mention, is that this is very specific to this area. Next slide. So again, I mentioned the adoption of these fees are based on the Nexus study that describes the purpose and use of the fees, the relationship between the need for these identified public facilities and new development, and the proportionality between the costs of identified public facilities attributed to growth and fee levels. That's the percentage. So quick overview of the ordinance. Again, it will amend and add a new chapter. We thought a lot about, well, do we just add it on to the existing chapter? Do we, move these things around? I thought this was the best approach. We have a brand new chapter, Bay Hill Specific Plan Area Development Impact Fee, so developers know what that is, and then we still have the citywide development impact fee. Next slide. So key components. Well, again, it's mostly written by attorneys, so there's a lot of legal terms, but I still think what we want to make sure is that the average homeowner who might be adding a new unit to their property, citywide again, or the average builder would be able to read this chapter and understand why they have to pay this fee. So it defines development projects that are subject to the fee, sets permit issuance as the time to calculate the fee, when the fees are due, provides a credit, annual reporting requirements consistent with state law, process for appeals, what good ordinance wouldn't be good, well written without a process for appeals, and then it sets my personal favorite, the annual inflation adjustment. I just love that because guess what? Inflation is real, it hurts all of us, but it also makes us ensure for city fees that they're tracking on, reality. And especially for construction costs, as you heard earlier with the city's Recreation Aquatic Center, there's been rapid escalation of construction costs, so we use a very specialized index here, the construction cost index, specifically for the Bay Area, which again tracks it. We're kind of in, unfortunately, this bubble around high construction costs, and that includes labor, goods, et cetera. So next slide. So the amendments to the existing ordinance are really to true up these two ordinances. In working with the attorneys to draft this brand new chapter, we realized in some cases we weren't entirely consistent with state law, or it just wasn't quite clear. Remember, we've had our current citywide ordinance, I think, since 2019. I think it was adopted in February. So we've had a few years, have, again, conversations with builders, like as a result of the survey, with what's confusing to you. So we wanted to clean it up to make it crystal clear what development projects are subject to the fee. It was pretty clear, but some of these things, it's always beneficial to be as precise as possible. So there's not a lot of room for, well, I was confused, or it doesn't really make sense to me. We also made sure it set the building permit issuance as a time to calculate the fees and when fees are due, and the time to calculate any credit for redevelopment. Next. So originally when we adopted that citywide ordinance, it had this robust reporting requirements, but the attorney said, just defer to state law. There's a lot more in state law, so it's sort of hard to cut and paste it all into our local ordinance. As you know, also state law is amended potentially every year, so it's hard to have a local ordinance that just chases state law. So we made sure it's consistent with the requirements in state law for annual reporting, which come to you every year. And then again, that inflation adjustment language, making sure we're tracking on just the right index to use for the CCI, construction costing indexing. And then a new section was added to our existing chapter. Again, make sure that developers know about this other Bay Hill specific area plan impact fee, and that applies separately from and in addition to the citywide impact fees. I can't say that enough, that sometimes people get confused about these things. So we just want to make it crystal clear that, again, it's layered on top of the citywide fees. Next. So the resolution, here are the fees. You're finally seeing them. I wanted to save most of the explanation of the fees for Jason because he's the one who calculated them. But to hit the high points here, we've got office, retail, and hotel fees. And then we've got multifamily fees. You might be looking at these thinking, well, that's interesting. Why is this, there's different rates for different multifamily residential units? That's, again, a change in state law that we now have to calculate them based on the size of the unit. I actually think this is a little odd because we probably won't not get a unit less than 407 square feet, although micro units do exist. But this is the new state law where we have to be very precise around the size of the residential unit and the calculation of the fee. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Jason, who can cover in a little bit more detail the study he did and the fee calculations.
Thank you. I'm Jason Moody. I'm a managing principal at Economic and Planning Systems, and our firm was responsible for drafting the nexus study that underlies these fees. A nexus study is required in order to charge these fees to show that you've calculated them correctly and there's a fair relationship. You can go to the next slide. So just to quickly overview, and thanks, Darcy, for making impact fees sound exciting. They really aren't that exciting, but they're pretty basic. Kind of going through the slides a little fast, but can you go back so I can go one by one? Essentially, fees are, you first have new development, and Bay Hill has about, I think, 2.5 million square feet of development, and then you can go to the next one, which creates people, workers, visitors, residents. You can go to the next slide. And that creates demand on infrastructure, and this is the steps that we go through in our impact fee study. You can go to the next slide. And you have to, some of that demand for infrastructure is already existing, and some of it is new, and so you have to allocate those costs, and you can go to the next slide. And with that comes your fee revenue. You develop a fee program, and you have a fee revenue, and you build the projects with the fee revenue. You can go to the next slide. The key components of the Nexus study are the growth projections, and again, as I said, there's about 2.5 million square feet of new development in Bay Hill. Then you develop the capital facilities list, and as Darcy mentioned, that comes pretty much directly from the specific plan. You allocate those costs, and you do a Nexus study, which we've done, and then these are what we call maximum allowable fees. You can't charge higher than the fees that we've shown. You can, at your discretion, charge less. And then finally, the Nexus report is submitted for your approval. And you can go to the next slide. The CIP, or the Bay Hill Capital Improvement Plan, new law requires that you actually approve a capital improvement plan specific to the Bay Hill in order to charge the fee. So that's one of the things you'll be doing today. And as mentioned, this is directly from the Bay Hill specific plan. And the costs that are there are different than what's in the Bay Hill specific plan, primarily because we've inflated those costs to $2022. And we've also included an administration fee for administrating the fee program. And again, the cost, we can go to the next slide. You have three types of improvements. We have access and connectivity improvements, which is mostly traffic, bike, street improvements, et cetera. That's about 18 million. Next one, you have water supply, which is just basically the buried water tank, which is 21 million. And then lastly, you have the stormwater improvements. You can go to the next chunk of slides. Total of about $45 million for all of that stuff, of which only about 30% or 29% is allocated to the fee program, or about 13 million. So the fee program will pay for about $13 million worth of these costs. And you can go to the next slide. And that's how we get to these fee numbers. And I think you've seen this table already. I won't go through it fee by fee, but those are the fees that will be applicable to new development in the Bay Hill specific plan.
Thanks. So the next steps are, if the council approves the introduction of the ordinance, then the next step would be to schedule a second reading, and ordinance goes into effect 30 days after that. But twist on the resolution, fee resolution, 60 days. So a little bit later. So the ordinance would be effective that day. And tonight's action before you tonight is to hold this public hearing, introduce, read by title only, waive further reading of the ordinance, take action on that potentially, and then take action on the resolution. That concludes my brief staff report. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions? Let's go ahead and open up the public hearing. There is
no virtual hands.
Member of the public in the room.
And no virtual hands are raised.
But staff is welcome to make public comment as well. You are. And there's no virtual hands raised? Okay, so we'll bring it back to the council.
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? And no abstentions. Okay.
I would like to make a quick comment that fees are exciting despite the lack of public comment.
Anybody else? Councilmember Medina? Nope. Go ahead. Great. I just had one question to the city attorney. Just a question what we talked about earlier, but just for the purpose of the public. But around the impact fees and whether they can be used as investments. So would it be possible for a percentage of the impact fee to invest?
Hi, Javon Grogan, City Manager. We do invest them. We invest in a number of different funds. I think what you're referring to is to invest them in a fund that returns a slightly higher rate of return than our normal investments, which are really geared to protection of capital. We're not out invested in growth stocks. We really invest all of our money for core protection of capital at very moderate interest rates. LAIF, Local Agency Investment Fund, is one of the big funds that we use. But
a percentage of the fees right now? Because I don't think it's in the breakdown.
All of our money is pooled cash that is invested. We keep a certain amount liquid for payment of routine invoices, but Any money that we're not using within the next 60 days is typically invested, just at a lower rate of return than what members of the public or in your average investment broker would invest at.
So could we designate a percentage of the development impact fees to just invest? Not to pool, but for purposes of a long-term investment for the city?
The city council, certainly at a later date, can take up your investment policy, and I would recommend that you obtain a investment advisor to do so, and certainly you can look at higher yield investments that come with higher risk, but certainly you can do that.
Recently did receive some development impact fees. I was hoping city manager could comment on that.
Sure. Javon Grogan, city manager, I've said that a lot tonight. Yes, it's true that the city did receive a recent payment from Google/YouTube for their community benefit payments as well as development impact fees related to phase 1 and 2. Probably best if I just share my screen, which I've done, but we're not seeing in the room here. Now we're seeing it. So if I can make it bigger, perfect. I'll say a lot of numbers, and it's probably just more helpful to have them up. But over the last several weeks, YouTube did pay a number of their fees for their phase 1 and phase 2 as per the city's development agreement. And so in summary, the net payments we received is $2 million for the building plan check and other permit fees, $10.1 million to our affordable housing fund. Probably worth noting, our fund only had $4 million in it, and so now it has 14, a significant multiple. $4.5 million for the Bay Hill area diff that they prepaid that in anticipation of your action tonight. A community benefit payment of $25.4 million and total citywide impact fees of $14.5 million for a total of $56.5 million, 54.5 net of the permit fees. And down at the bottom, the council knows this, but our citywide development impact fees are broken into buckets, and there are 5 buckets there that total that $14.5 million, so about 6.6 for community facilities. Public safety impact fee, just under $450,000. Government impact fee, general government impact fee of just over $700,000, transportation impact of $5.3 million, and utility impact of $1.3 million. Worth noting that while $56 million or $54 million is a lot of money, we know that we have over $350 million of needed expenditures that we've identified. And there are a number of known unknowns, where a known unknown is, we know it's a problem, but we actually don't have a number to put on it. A good example of that is our irrigation. We know is, in many of our parks, over 50 years old, and we're holding it together, but we don't have a good number on that, and so we'll be working on putting a good number on that, as well as some unknown unknowns that we'll work to bring some clarity to. And so we will be embarking on the next phase of our comprehensive fiscal sustainability project and working with the city council on allocating funds in the new year, as well as looking holistically at how we fund those things that we know will still be underfunded. Thank you.
No, thank you, City Manager Grogan. That's a nice chunk of money, and we have a lot of things that we need to still fix, so it's a great start. So thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for sharing that slide. That's actually what triggered my question about the investment, because it's not a separate bucket. Like you were going to say something or no? No. Okay. Well, exciting times. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I think we call the mayor back up, Mayor Medina. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Councilmember Hamilton.
Through the Vice Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 7A as read by the city clerk.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. No? No no's, no abstentions? Okay, approved, thank you. And call Mayor Medina back up. And thank you, Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you again, Vice Mayor, I appreciate it. Now we'll move on to item 9, comments from council members. We'll just go down. No? Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Medina. Tomorrow at Bel Air School, 230 families will be receiving groceries from Second Harvest of Silicon Valley and worked by a number of hardworking volunteers. So if you or someone that you know needs some groceries, by all means, at 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, Bel Air Elementary, 450 3rd Avenue. Or if you would like to help volunteer, you're also welcome. So look forward to seeing you there tomorrow.
Councilmember Hamilton.
And I will be there tomorrow. And we could always use the help, so I echo that. Also upcoming this Saturday is the monthly pancake breakfast at the American Legion. It'll be at 9 o'clock, $12 a head for breakfast, and all the funds go to support the American Legion. So highly recommend you join us. It's a fun community event, and you get a great breakfast. So hope to see you there.
Thank you, Councilmember. Vice Mayor Mason.
Yeah, so it's a couple things. One is I just want to reiterate an email I sent earlier, hoping that the CityNet discussion will be a public meeting. This is an item that the public has been waiting for an update on for some time. And I think that it's really important that the discussion be had publicly to ensure that the public is aware of where we are with CityNet and what the options are or aren't. We don't know, but I would just prefer that we have a public meeting as opposed to 2x2 meetings. The next comment is just a thank you to staff who helped with the Dia de los Muertos event that was hosted largely by the library here in the Senior Center. It was really a great turnout. As always, the event just keeps growing, and having a live mariachi was just really quite nice and just a great event. So hopefully we'll continue doing that every year as it was done last year. So I'm hopeful it's a monthly, I mean an annual event. Monthly would be great, but it would be expensive. Just highlighting also that this past month, this month that's coming to an end is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. That really affects women in significantly greater numbers than men, and provided the recent violent and gruesome attack in San Carlos, I think it's important that the residents of San Bruno are also aware that San Mateo County does have a service named Cora, and it does have a 24-hour phone line, and should anybody be in any trouble, please make sure to call the phone line, call our local police who know where the resources are, and if you see or hear any neighbors, just be prepared to offer them those phone numbers or those services, because oftentimes people don't know that they're available. A reminder, if you are not aware, that this weekend is the downtown trick or treat. So the downtown merchants are putting on this event. It was a really nice event last year, and it's from 2 to 5. They're going to have candy available for anybody who wants to come downtown and trick or treat. So everybody's encouraged to attend. And then the last item is actually an item that is for a future agenda item. And it's a request of the council to schedule a closed session meeting pursuant to Government Code 54957 for personnel matters, in particular evaluation of a public employee. I'm not sure if the city, if anyone has questions of the city attorney, but we would need 3 votes to have this meeting. And so I did want to go ahead and make that request at this time.
Any questions to the Vice Mayor on the request or clarifications that are needed? Councilmember Medina?
Of something that could be, we're having a closed session to talk about it, but if, I'm not aware of what this issue is, but if, I would support it, just to hear what it is, because there's no way for us to talk about it other than in a closed session, so.
Any other?
No, I'll refer to the city attorney, just for purposes of the record. Is that sufficient?
Well, I think we need a motion, though.
Let's make
Yeah.
sure we can do it.
But is there any other questions or clarifications? Then I don't know if this is, to the Vice Mayor of the City Attorney. So a motion is fine? Okay. Is there a motion on the request?
I'll motion for a future closed session, either at a special meeting or a regular meeting, to consider the evaluation and performance of a public employee.
Second?
Motion Mason, second, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Mason, seconded Councilmember Medina. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Let's say, any abstention? So 5-0 in favor.
Thank you. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. Seeing no others, I have a few things. My suggestion would be for the rest of the committee, commissions, and boards, maybe we can let them know when those reappointments will have, because I mean, I appreciated Janet did the pledge, but if she sat here through the whole meeting thinking, you know, her term was up, I think that would be helpful, just so that they know as well. And I'll try to reach out to her tomorrow, not tonight, it's late. I just wanted to say a few things. The 3 Cs are doing fire mitigation within the Crestmore Canyon. I went up and saw them, and it's again making a difference and keeping up what we've already invested in and we've done. I wanted to thank all of those in the community as well as the volunteers who did the community recology drop-off day. Had 423 vehicles came through between 8 and 11, and it went past 11 because everybody that was in line by 11 was honored to go through the drop-off. And we'll have more stats and data later, but it was a great event. Also, some of us, I think all of us attended the ribbon cutting for the 30 faculty housing. They're up by Skyline College, where it's already in Kenyatta. It's at CSM, and now we have 30 units, which for those that took tours, they're nice units. And it will ensure that faculty can have housing at a reasonable rate in order to keep our quality and our faculty here and not further away. 2 things finishing, one thing finishing, and then I'd like to adjourn in a moment of silence. Monica Walker, as I alluded to earlier, tomorrow is her last day. She's an employee that has been here 10 years. I was fortunate enough to be signing papers at City Hall and then was able to just say thank you and goodbye. I shouldn't say goodbye, but thank you. She is a person, as I indicated, the city manager gave a very nice talk and allowed me to say a couple words. And this is a person who I think her heart, her spirit, her devotion, her dedication into this staff in this city have been phenomenal and inspirational. And as I said, I've never met another person, there are a few others, that are just with such kindness and do their job with such dedication. And I want to thank her, honor her, and recognize her. And then finally, today, this morning, we lost a former member of the staff, Terry Jackson, and she was our library services director. Terry had been a long time with this community. People may not remember, but she was the first member who was a woman to become in the San Bruno Rotary. Keep in mind, back then, women weren't allowed. She was the first. She also, you say library services, but she also was the interim director for planning and building. And somebody told me today that she was the interim for community services at a point. She retired in 2009, and I'm not going to do her whole bio. We'd be here a long time, but with the news, I thought it was important. When she retired, but as you know, when we had that horrible day in September in 2010, she came back and assisted us in a very important role, working closely with the city manager and public relations. And I will tell you, she was a mentor to many. I remember getting sworn in a long time ago, sitting next to her, and I was nervous, I'll be honest, and she touched me and said, Rico, just breathe. Breathe. You'll do fine. She was comforting. She certainly gave her opinions, whether you wanted to hear them sometimes or not. But I will tell you that her dedication to the community, her profession, to this county, to this community, to Rotary, to the city of Millbrae where she resides, are without exception. And I think I will honor her at a later time, but I certainly, with hearing the news this morning, wanted to acknowledge her. I'd like to have a certificate sent to the Jackson family that this meeting was adjourned in her honor and her memory, and our thanks to her for all that she has done, all that she has touched, all of the difference she has made, and she has left this world a better place. So if you would join me in a moment of silence in honoring Terry Jackson. With that, thank you. We will thank you to the staff. Thank you, colleagues. And we will adjourn this meeting to the next regular city council meeting, which will be held on November the 2nd, 2022 at 7 p.m. Meeting adjourned.